I call this meeting for the Budget Committee to order, and Lisa, if you'd be kind enough to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we get started, I just want to go through what the plan of the evening is. The primary mission of this evening's meeting is for the Budget Committee to actually adopt its positions on the various warrant articles for the town as well as the school district. But before we get started on that, I'd like to open it up to public comment, and just a comment on the public comment. Because of the time constraint that we have this evening, we'd like to try to keep the public comment to a concise and succinct minimum if we can, but we're going to allow for comment to go as we need to during the public comment section. And then once we get into the committee business, we will not be entertaining public comment at that point, only because we feel we'd like to be able to have our meeting and be able to get through all the articles succinctly and be able to actually get through it this evening, so that the next two evenings, tomorrow night we have the school district budget hearing, and on Thursday we have another hearing on the town side. So we'd like to be able to go into these meetings with the Budget Committee's positions made available. With that, I'll open it up to anybody who does have public comment. By all means, please come on up and provide your comment as you would like. And all I'd like to ask is for the committee is to, entertain the comments, and then we'll just move on and try not to engage too much. If we can keep it succinct, that'd be great.
Yes. Don't engage with the taxpayers. All right. Mike Brown, 5 Carousel Court. I'll do my best, given the limited nature of the public comments this evening. It's going to be very difficult to give you feedback on $90 million of budget and multiple warrant articles in 5 minutes. Hopefully you'll understand that that's going to be very difficult. However, I will attend the public hearings and provide feedback as well tomorrow night and Thursday night. On the town side, I guess I would start with the operating budget. If I'm not mistaken, the council proposed operating budget is still above default. And as I've said previously to this board and as well as the council, I don't believe that in this economy and the significance of the impacts that economy has had on the larger taxpayer base, that we should be putting forward a budget that's anything less than at or below default, such as what the school district has proposed. In listening to the various arguments for why the town operating budget is where it is, while I understand the reasons behind it, I still feel that there are a variety of things that can be done on the town side to get the operating budget at or below default. And these are the types of things I was hoping the Budget Committee would take into consideration tonight before making a position, as well as what I hope to enumerate tomorrow night. There are multiple articles on the, there is several things that I think they can look at. I know they're looking at, the library as well as some other areas, but I think Dave Caron, when he was asked would there be any layoffs if he was to go to a true default, his answer was no, there wouldn't be. So in my mind, I think the council and the budget committee should take that at face value and strive to get to an operating budget that's at or below default if there are not going to be any layoffs involved in that. As far as some of the other articles that are being presented, all of which have a tax rate impact to the taxpayer, Article 3, which is asking for $100,000 in tax in money from the taxpayers. I believe the town could reduce that by $35,000 and still accomplish what they were hoping to accomplish, and be able to reduce the tax rate further by 1 cent. Each $35,000 equates to 1 cent reduction or increase in the tax rate based on our overall valuation. So I think there could be a $35,000 reduction in that article alone and still accomplish the spirit and intent of what the town manager was proposing for that article. Same thing for Article 5. I think they could reduce that from $2.55 down to $2.20, reducing the tax rate by another 1 cent. The overlay account is another area that the council has previously looked at before. It's more or less an insurance account for abatements and other things that may impact the town over the course of the following year. I think it would be wise for the Budget Committee to request what the run rate is for that particular account. The request is the standard $300,000. I believe in previous years that's been reduced significantly without any impact. So absent any significant forecast of abatement activity for the FY13 budget, I think that account could be reduced by another $35,000 down to $265, not have any impact, and reduce the tax rate by another penny. So those the three things I just mentioned, while it's only 3 cents, what we're talking about here is, is a way for us to collectively get the tax rate down in any way possible. And as a budget committee, you guys have to holistically look at the tax bill. So a couple pennies on the town side, a couple pennies on the school side, and in effect, you end up making a difference to someone's tax bill. So, and the last thing that I would talk about from the town perspective is just kind of a data point that tends to get missed when articles are put forward in terms of labor agreements. I won't get into into a conversation about collective bargaining and what labor agreements, how you come to labor agreements. We have a couple labor agreements put in front of us on the town side and the school side. So I think it's important that when the council and the budget committee are talking about the two, when you're talking about the LAEA agreement in particular, while that contract does indeed have a 0% cost of living increase for the first year, and the other contract, if I'm not mistaken, also has the same thing. I'm not sure if there's a third contract or not. You would correct me if I'm wrong. But of the two I've seen, the first year does not have a COLA, which in and of itself is a very good thing. It shows some significant willingness on the part of the bargaining unit and the town's negotiating committee to try to do something on behalf of the taxpayers. But what gets lost in that for the LAEA agreement is there still is a merit increase opportunity of 3% for individuals in that unit. So while it's good to say that there's a 0% COLA, I think we need to alert the taxpayers before they vote and before you put your stamp of approval or not on a contract that you understand that there is going to be an increase in pay for those individuals, and it could be as high as 3% in year 1. In year 2, it's a guaranteed COLA of 2% plus an additional potential 3%. So in year 2 and 3, individuals in that unit can be as high as 5%. I think for full disclosure, taxpayers should be told that at the public hearing, they should be told that at the deliberative session, and they should be told what the 3-year cost is of a contract, not what the 1-year cost is. On the school side, while I applaud the school district for coming in once again below default, which is what I think the town should do as well, and which the town did last year, and I know I did watch the last school district meeting. I am aware that they reduced their under default by an additional 50,000, so they're approximately 356,000 below default as of this evening. At the last meeting that the Budget Committee attended, there were several, what I thought were several good points made by some of the Budget Committee members, and I wasn't so sure that the committee got the type of answer I think you should have gotten, and I can't recall who was asking it, but I know Dan asked, Chris, and a couple other people asked about that there appears to be a couple things, just for example, a couple things in the capital lease that appear to be things that we could do without for a year, and it wouldn't impact the core mission of the school district. And I'm just bringing these things up. I highlighted them as I watched the tape. You know, the sound system at the gym for $17,500, the video security system for $42,400, and the grounds storage shed / pavilion, $26,000. Those three things collectively are about $85,900. Okay. And while the school district did provide answers to those questions about why they need it, I'm not so sure the final answer should be, we'll go ahead with it. I think those were three good examples brought up by the Budget Committee of kind of looking for pennies on the tax rate here and there where we could make a difference. So I think you should pursue that further, okay? And pursue getting the operating budget down lower than it is if we can. In terms of the two contracts, once again, on the school side, I think for the sake of full disclosure, before you vote and put your support on it, and before the taxpayer puts their support or not on it, the teacher's contract, you know, does have a 19-cent increase in the tax rate for FY13, the budget that we're talking about. But I think it's critical that the Budget Committee and the school board at the public hearing on Wednesday, tomorrow night, kind of be upfront about what the real three-year cost of this contract is. Voting yes for this contract is not just 19 cents and $638,000. It's $2,336,958. It's 19 cents, 18 cents, and then a staggering 31 cents in year 3. So please, for the sake of full disclosure, don't undersell what a yes vote means to this. And the reason when someone talks about these things, particularly someone who's at a mic being recorded with a reporter in the audience, if there is one, I'm not questioning the value of anyone's position, anyone's work ethic, anyone's value. And hopefully it won't get misconstrued that way. And hopefully the Budget Committee won't construe it that way as well. But while good people could view this contract as a reasonable contract that came to fruition through collective bargaining, given the economic situation that we're still in, given the dramatic impact that it's had on the majority of the taxpayers in this town who happen to not work under these types of agreements, individually, I sure would have rather seen something less than this. It would have been nice to have, you know, maybe a 1, 1.5, 2, maybe a 0, 2, and a 2.5. But when you're looking at, you know, what you're looking at, it's a sizable amount of money and tax rate impact over the course of the next 3 years, with the back end part of this being truly significant. I'm not so sure the Budget Committee shouldn't raise that tomorrow night and question that. I'm not so sure you should support it without having that discussion, because it's the largest amount of money, I think, of any labor agreement in town. In terms of the other agreement, much smaller dollars. 3-year total cost is about $170,000. Small tax rate impact, but once again, it sure would have been nice to see something less than an even 3-year split, like a 0, 1, 2, a 1, 1.5, 2, versus what we're looking at. I don't think a lot of people in the private sector who make up the majority of the taxpayers in this town are getting guaranteed 2% or higher raises over the course of the next 3 years. In fact, the guarantees really don't exist. So one last thing on the school district, and I know I'm going to forget something in the short amount of time I have. I brought this up at the last meeting I was here. I'll bring it up again. I don't believe it's the time to add any positions to either of these budgets. I believe the additional groundskeeper is still in the budget for the school district. As I stated before, I don't think that it's proper to do that in this economy. I would ask that you not support that as my budget committee. Okay, in addition to those 3 items that I talked about before, which were $85,900 on the capital lease, this is a fully loaded cost of $61,602, in addition to adding an employee to the payroll, okay? Again, I think if we went without that position over the course of the FY12 budget, I think we can do the same thing for the FY13 budget. So I really don't think we should have any added positions. So I'd like you to not support that as well. That's what I have for now. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Oh, one last point. I'm sorry, but I promised that I would bring this up. As one individual taxpayer and one former member of the Budget Committee and one former counselor, one of the single best data tools we had was the taxpayer white paper. Okay, it's not up there. It's been taken down. The new one's not up there. I would have loved to have used that prior to tomorrow night's public hearing and prior to Thursday night's public hearing. I'm not sure what you folks can do to get that up there between now and then, but it's a disservice not to have it up there as my budget committee. So I'm kind of dissatisfied about that. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Glenn Douglas, 6 Overlook Ave. I've got a couple things. First off, I think I'd second most everything Mike said. He's been spending a lot more time paying attention than I have, and he does a much better job squeezing it into limited public comment. First off, this is on the town website, Budget Committee. There's an email address for all you folks. It doesn't work. It doesn't go to the right people. And I'd asked about it several times, up to and including the town, to please fix. Right now, I got a very nice response from Deb Nowicki saying, sorry, I'm not on the Budget Committee anymore. I get emails back from Mark Oswald that his email address is invalid. It would be nice if that worked. That's the first one. The second one is more of a question. There's a 40-page budget booklet available for the public hearing tomorrow night, school district. Do any of you have it?
For the school?
School district.
Yes.
Did everyone get it?
I got it today, so I don't know who else has it.
I've asked before, and the school district doesn't seem to send out agendas. They certainly don't send out public notification of what's on the website. I just happened to notice it because I was on the school website looking for something else today. But as the third-party reviewer and the taxpayer's voice, it would be nice if the school district would send documents to the entire budget committee so you guys have a chance to read them before tomorrow night. The white paper, again, absolutely second, Mike. I had asked about that, I think, back in the summer, and was told that it would be up online as soon as the town got to doing it, and they haven't. Which is unfortunate because I know a lot of people use that. I use it all the time. And in fact, because the town redid its website, they actually wiped out all old taxpayer white papers, so there's no historical data. The big one tonight is, I've been following this a long time, numbers-wise and budgets and this and that. I had numbers for school budgets and the cost of quote education on the school side back to 1998. I got into a conversation with someone in Bedford, and they pay attention to Bedford. So I pulled all my old numbers out from 1998, the state cost of education. I don't have the exact numbers because I don't know where the email went, but it was around mid-$5,500 per student in Londonderry. After 13 years, the price of education in Londonderry is now 99.7% higher than it was 13 years ago. But I didn't have the latest numbers, and I wanted the latest numbers, so I contacted the school district. I asked them for the numbers for the school budget, number of FTEs, full-time equivalent employees, and the student enrollment, all the way back till 1998. The best they could give me was the numbers back to partially to about 2004. When I looked at those numbers, I compared the budget, I looked at the full-time employees, and although I'd been told several times and read several times that over the course of the years, we have reduced the number of full-time employees by X% number per employee decrease. The numbers I was given by the Londonderry School District showed a 20% increase from 2006 to present. I sent that to the Budget Committee and asked, could you please explain to me what that ad is about? Didn't get a response. I went to the last school budget workshop. I waited. No one brought it up, and I brought it up. I'm kind of disappointed that school district numbers that show an increase were not questioned by the Budget Committee, were not questioned the school board. The school board that night said their numbers were wrong that they gave me, and they sent me new numbers. They said they would post it on the website and explain. So here are the new numbers that they sent. And I'm just going to go through the years because they lost the numbers for 2004 and 2005 and only gave me back to 2006. 2006 to 2007, enrollment decreased by 101 students. We had 19 full-time FTEs were added. 2007 to 2008, we were down another 41 students. We added 10 FTEs. 2008 to 9, we decreased another 139 students. We added 7 FTEs. In 2009 to 10, we lost another 121 students, and we cut 27 positions, FTEs. 2010 to 11, another 98 students down. We cut another 27 FTEs. In 11 to 12, another 118 students, and we cut 98 FTEs. Based on the school's formula, I don't understand the cuts because we've been adding when we've been losing and we've been cutting. But basically, over the last 6 years of enrollment, we've gone from 5,464 students down to 4,846, which is a total loss of 600 students, or 11.3%. FTEs decreased from 784 to 668, or 14.8%, but the budget has gone from $53,366,710 up to $64,322,575, or went up 20%. We're asking about sheds, and it seems to be doing what we do at town meeting. We spent a lot of time talking about a groundskeeper position. You know, a 99% increase in 13 years is significant. 20% increase is significant. I believe the town budget increased in the same time about 8.9% as opposed to 20.5%. You guys are supposed to be our voice and asking and questioning. I don't understand why when numbers like that are presented, you don't even get a response. I really don't. Unfortunately, there's very few people in the room behind me, but a lot of the people I talk to after about 7 years of doing this say it just doesn't make a difference. We come, we talk, nothing changes, doesn't make a difference. So I guess I'm a little disappointed in the lack of questioning significant numbers. I don't know if the school district sent you those numbers or not. They didn't post them on their website. I'll probably ask them again tomorrow night about the inconsistencies of the cuts. I know a lot of people who lost their jobs. It seems the biggest swoop was last year, according to the latest numbers. I don't understand that. It should have been consistent for the last 6 years. But
No, we're not engaging, we're just listening to comments, and we got to move on to the articles.
Okay.
Martin Srugas, 17 Wimbledon Drive. I'll keep this short and sweet. As you all know, in both the town side and the school side, 80% to 85% of the cost are people cost, contracts, benefits, and things like that. Unfortunately, I just got this stuff today, so I hadn't had a chance to really look into it deeply, but just on a quick review of the contract, I think they're all overly generous. Given the standing of the economy and the job loss to people in town, hours, you know, you name it. I've said it before, you know what I'm talking about. In looking at the allied health benefits and compensation, you know, I don't think most hospitals give this kind of benefits out where these people come from. It's just overly generous. I'd like to see the Budget Committee vote no on all the labor contracts, and that for the next 3 years we have zero increase in the labor. At the end of the 3 years, this is going to be a substantial cost. All of you are going to get the same letter that I'm going to get from the bank saying that your escrow account does not have enough money. And either you throw in $1,000 or more, or your rates are going to go up significantly, and that's what's going to be facing a lot of the elderly in town, the single income people, the blue collar. You know, these contracts are a slap in the face to a lot of the people who do not have double incomes coming in. And this is unaffordable, I'm sorry, but I'd like to see you vote no on this.
Thank you. Any other comment at this point? Going once, twice, sold. Okay, I'm going to close the session for public comment at this time, and we'll move on to committee business. And this evening, to recap committee business, what we plan to do this evening is go through the warrants and have our meeting among the budget committee members. So with that, we plan to vote whether or not we support or not support the various articles on the town side, as well as the various articles on the school district side. We can start out with the town. Yeah, do you want to take care of minutes first? Yeah, why don't we, thank you.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of housekeeping items. In terms of approval of minutes, we have minutes from October 27th meeting, as well as December 15th meeting. I'm not sure if folks have had a chance to actually review these. I know I looked through them online and from Lisa, and I didn't see anything I didn't agree with from my perspective, so open it up to anybody else if you have any corrections.
The only
updates.
thing I gave to Lisa was I noticed that Marty's name was spelled wrong, so I have to correct that.
Srugis,
Good catch.
no E. So
Any
I
other amendments at this point? Do anybody
move
want to take a minute, folks? Just scan it once
Yeah.
quickly.
So I move adoption of the minutes, and we have one amendment.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second, or do people would like to take a moment?
Moment,
Have a
please.
second?
That's in both
Moment,
sets of
please.
minutes.
Sure.
Okay, close it. So my apologies, I added in vowel for no purpose at all.
You voting on these separately or just?
We're on the October 27th
thank you.
now.
Are we good with the 27th? It was a motion. We had a second. All those in favor, if you're ready, John. All those in favor to approve the minutes, say
As
aye.
amended.
Aye.
Aye.
As amended correctly. All those against? That's 7-0 in favor. Okay, moving on to the minutes for December 15th meeting. If we're ready,
Do we have a motion?
entertain a motion. Do you have a motion to approve the
A
minutes?
motion to accept the minutes for December 15th,
Do you have a
2011.
second? Second, Dan? Okay, if we're ready,
And just the same amendment, I've mangled Mr. Strugis's last name, so that will be corrected.
all those in favor as amended, say aye.
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 Those against? It's 7-0. Chair votes in favor as well. Okay, thank you, Lisa, for keeping me straight on the housekeeping items. Anxious to dig into the detail. So we'll be starting out with the town side on the various articles. We'll skip right over Article number 1 since it's just for the election of officers and so forth. So jumping right into Article 2, which is the bond issue for highway reconstruction. It was a $537,000 article. $500,000 for the actual funding, and $37,000, I believe, is the interest, if I'm correct.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of Article number 2.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have discussion?
I would just make the comment that we were present at the last meeting of the town council. Article 2 is mated to Article 16. The original proposal was a $1 million bond issue. It was decided to back that down to $500,000 and to, this year, establish a roadway maintenance trust fund. The concern was that if it's placed in the budget, it's subject to the vagaries of town council and voter action, and road maintenance is something that we did not want to compromise on. So I am in support of Article number 2 as written.
Great, and it should be noted, I believe, that the intent, I believe, in the meetings that I've attended and we've all attended with regard to this particular item is to try to wean us off of the need for continuous accrual of debt and debt load going forward. So I would also personally be in favor of this article. So, any other points of commentary? No?
Just with the original bond that was gonna come out was $1 million. It was gonna be $1,048,000. So the interest rate on that first year is at a higher rate, but overall with the debt schedule itself being reduced by another $500,000, it basically pays for itself, that additional percentage.
In this
So,
particular
I'm in favor
article,
of it.
I'm sorry,
No, that's all right, go ahead.
this particular article helps to get us through this low spot. There's gonna be a trough, if you will, on the curve of getting over the need for debt, while we win ourselves off of having this debt load. There's going to be a dip in the amount of funding that we have available for the roads. While this helps, it may not cover everything that Janos would have liked to have seen in his budget, or monies to work with for road reconstruction. However, it does help to wean us off the bonds, and then by taking this action coupled with the other items, Article 16, and then
Exactly. If you
going
want the
forward,
roads,
you wean yourself off the debt load, and then you just fund it via the budget.
right, but if you want the roads
Operating
repaired
budget.
properly, it's basically you need both. One's gonna reduce, one is going to increase. But it's coming out of your pocket rather than rather than
And
that
you-
schedule.
And you're not paying interest,
Exactly.
even though interest is cheap right now. It's just the principle, the idea, I think, we had a consensus that agreed that it made sense to wean ourselves off of the need for that and fund pay-as-you-go type of mentality. So, okay. Any other comments or input that they'd like to add to this article, Article 2? We have a motion on the floor. We had a second. Are we ready? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. The chair is also in favor, and anybody against? Okay, that's 7-0. We are in support of Article 2. Moving on to Article 3, Expendable Maintenance Trust. This is for the $200,000. Excuse me. Everybody has this in front of them. This is the Town's Maintenance Trust Fund. It's created by the voters back in 2003 originally, and the purpose is for repairing and maintaining the various town facilities and to authorize the use of these funds of the June 30th fund balance in the amount of $100,000 in coordination with this, towards this appropriation. So the net effect of this one is actually, the tax rate impact is about 3 cents in the FY13 budget, so on the taxpayer, so 3 cents per thousand.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of Article number 3.
Do I have a second?
Can I pose a question before we vote on that? Do we know how much is in that trust fund now?
Yeah, I believe, what was that?
I wouldn't be favor of adding to it if it's, you know,
No,
if it's sufficient now, because this isn't a year to
by chance was that.
put a nest egg away for spending if we can
I
save it.
forget what the carry forward budget was.
Question was asked, I'm not sure that we have
What's
a
that?
note in here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a principal thing where they're taking the money that was left over and they're putting it with this, and the coupling of it gives them what they needed, so they felt comfortable.
So, but it says that there's a tax impact of 3 cents fiscal year, so it looks to me like they're increasing it. I mean, it's increased from last year, as I understand.
That's the 200,000,
Right.
that element of it.
But the tax impact will be based on the 100,000, and they'll be using the June 30th undesignated fund balance to bring that up to the 200,000. This is a.
They're asking for
authorization.
100,000 more.
Well, no, I don't think it's an increase. I think it's just a yearly.
I think
This
it's,
is just on there every year to tax.
they're sustaining our investment in the expendable maintenance trust fund, is my
If
understanding.
that's already in there, there would be no tax impact.
No, the
No,
impact
it's
is
a
what it
different-
is going to be.
He's reading you're reading the $100,000 fund balance is funding that. Is that two different bank accounts?
It's not in,
My understanding is taking 100 from 100 that's there and supplementing it. Is that, am I
They're
incorrect?
taking 100 from the undesignated fund balance,
Right.
which is a whole different bank account, and putting it into this bank account for repairs for the town.
And what we're raising by property
Instead of raising
taxes is the
taxes.
100,000.
Plus
I don't know why
100,
they
plus
just can't
100.
spend it out of the
Right.
undesignated fund balance, but I'm
That's
sure there's
the-
laws for that.
you're right.
Is that true?
Well, I'm in favor of moving the 100 over, but I don't think we should be supplementing in a year that, you know, people are struggling to keep their houses, so that's my 2 cents.
No.
Do you want to present
Any
that
I
as
don't
an
remember
amendment?
anything
What's
that
that?
was
Yeah,
slated
present that
that
as
had
an
to be done
amendment?
right
I
now.
don't
We
know
have
that,
to second the
I don't
motion.
know that we can amend a warrant. I
There
think we
was a
vote up or
motion.
down.
We can amend our opinion. Oh, well,
Yeah.
I guess that's true.
Do we
There was
have a
motion.
second on?
Do we want to retract the
Have a
motion
second?
and make a different motion? Or
no,
actually,
because
we need to
we're
vote on
voting-
this article for or against.
That's,
Yes,
yeah,
no.
Correct.
yes,
Okay,
that's
no,
my
fine.
understanding,
That's
yes or
fine.
no?
Right.
That's it, that's it. So
Yeah.
this,
do we
this
have a
article,
second on
Article
this?
3 is a 3 cents impact on the tax rate, $200,000. We had a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Or do we have more discussion on the point?
We need a second for discussion.
We have to I second for
Thanks,
discussion.
Chris.
Okay. I
Yeah.
thought we already had a second.
So
Any-
is there further discussion on it?
I don't see any. Okay, when we take a vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against?
Aye.
Nay?
Aye.
So 1 to
So-
6 to 0.
Yeah. Article 4, moving forward. This is the operating budget, the town operating budget. We had a town council budget of $26,863,000. $26,999, or the default budget is $26,741,721. The estimated tax impact of the town council budget is $4.62 per thousand. The estimated tax impact for the default budget is $4.59 per thousand. Do I have a motion?
How are we gonna do this one, Todd?
So
We're
nobody
gonna
likes
choose
any
which
of it?
one to support?
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
So would we just make a motion and then we all vote against it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You can do that.
You-
So can I make a motion to not,
No, you make a motion to support it, and
And
if,
then-
and
no,
it's,
but I don't want to
Defeat-
support it.
But
Then
then you
you
defeat
don't-
the
I
motion.
make a motion not to
Then you-
support it.
then you vote.
Then you
Because I
defeat
think
the-
this
You
is a
vote
matter of
against it.
just practice.
I
You're
think
making a
this is really-
motion
yeah.
to move it to vote,
Right,
That's
All
it.
right.
right.
okay?
And then
So,
you
and
can-
then you have the,
Exactly.
you have
Then
the
I make a
opportunity
motion to move it to vote.
Okay, Dan?
I second.
Chris seconds.
So,
And so
Wait
we're
a minute,
voting
what-
on item A at this point?
we're voting on Article number 4, whether or not we vote on, yes, we're voting on A, whether or not we support the town council budget as amended of the $26,863,999. Now, with this, as we move forward, right, we are going to vote either we support it or we don't, and then if whatever, and then we'll go to the B, and we'll vote whether we support that or not.
I don't think we get to on the ballot.
negative.
I think it's if we vote against A, they're
Exactly.
assuming we're voting for the
Well, yeah,
default.
yeah, if we vote against
One or
A,
the
it's
other.
B. Yeah,
it's one or the
it's
other.
default, forgive me. So, do I have a motion to,
Any discussion?
for
We have a
Article number 4 for A? Do I have a second?
Yep, Dan and Chris.
Yeah, we
Okay,
did that.
all those in,
Do we want to
all
discuss
those
this
in
first?
favor
Discuss
of,
it?
Wait,
yeah, do we want to discuss?
excuse me. I think we should discuss this before we just, that's a big number to just
I was-
vote on without
I wanted
without
to go
full
to discussion.
discussion.
Faster than town meeting.
Full
if you just-
disclosure here.
As a point of order, you might need to withdraw the motion, and
No, we have a
Discussion.
motion, it was seconded, it's up for
Now we
discussion,
discuss.
but I think,
and now we discuss.
You didn't make a
Before we
motion.
vote. That's the way we're,
all right, my understanding would you would discuss before you move to vote, but anyway,
Robert's rule says you move and then discuss.
all right, that's fine. This is one of these, perhaps hold your nose and pick one, but, you know, I think the message that we've heard from folks coming in here who are paying the tax bills are, you know, live within our means and, you know, keep it as flat as possible, and that's what default budget does. I'm not sure I understand all the implications. I mean, I've been here for the town side, and I missed the last school presentations, but I'm not sure I understand what the implications are of the default budget, what's gonna be cut.
well, that's what,
There've been a lot of discussions on different things that are potentials, but I think
I think that's one of the issues that I've always had is.
that we don't know.
I think there are things that you can cut, and I think there are places that you could find decreases, but we don't really get to say what it is.
Right.
We're just kind of at the,
We're advisory only, and we can ask questions, and,
I mean, they're gonna cut where they're gonna cut, and it's probably gonna be someplace you don't like.
yeah.
So they can say, see, don't like that, do you?
If I could just point out between Article 4A in the amount of $26,863,999 and the default budget, which is $26,741,721, that's not a big void. And default is not unreasonably out of bounds to ask the town manager to find, in my opinion,
It's a
those
This
savings.
is, yeah, it's a $122,278 difference, all right? This is more a matter of principle right now. The only difference this year from the last several years, all right, we've come to a below default budget for the last several years here. This year, we change a government, and all of a sudden, we're well above, and we're trying to refill all the bank accounts. I have an issue with that. I've had an issue with that throughout this whole thing. I think the best thing we can do in our situation as a recommending board is you vote for the default, all right? What that does, it restricts to that 2.5%, all right? I'd love to see it go even lower. But it just shows everybody that we're recommending that we go to the default budget. We don't approve of what's coming in as the town manager's budget. I know what the intention is here, to refill these bank accounts that have been voided over the last couple of years, but I don't think this is the time to do it. I don't think
at this
this is the
juncture,
year.
it's questionable.
You tell me crazy, but I think I would have just liked to have seen another number in there lower than default to have a vote on.
Excuse me, sorry.
My only comment is that I have a problem with the process this year on this whole thing. I really feel like next year the town manager should tell us what's going to happen with a default budget and go from there. Because it seems like we spent hours and hours and hours trying to cut down a budget just to get to default, and that's what we're going to end up at. So why don't we just start there and move up from there?
And
It
just to play,
didn't-
just to play devil's advocate, I think that it's been somewhat a moving target. I mean, every time we come in and there's an adjustment made at the town council level, the manager has to reassess and move things around. And so, I mean, I understand that aspect of it, but I think that the default budget is made up of, contractual obligations and things that going forward, I think, need to be reassessed in this town. And, we talked a little bit about the school contract. I mean, I'm not getting a cost of living increase this year. I don't think anybody outside the public sector or, union representation is. That's fine. That's the job of the union to advocate for its members. But by the same token, I think that that has to change in terms of how it's approached. And, perhaps it's negotiating a contract, and maybe this is idealistic, but negotiating a contract that ebbs and flows with the finances of the town. When the town's bringing in, good revenue, that's fine, and reward the employees that do good work. But when the economy's bad and everybody's going downward, it's hard to sell that and vote for that. And I think you're right, the default budget vote may be just sending the message that, we got to tighten the belt more. We are, as Glenn said, we're the advocates of the taxpayers. Nobody doubts that these folks are working hard, but, we all are too in the private sector, and we're not getting any richer, that's for sure.
The issue to me boils down to the typical household in this economy. Yes, GDP is starting to see some sluggish, minimal growth. There's so many people out there that are not seeing raises. They're underemployed. They've taken on jobs that, frankly, they're not making what they used to make. It's a lot of people just struggling, right? They're getting by, some. Some have been in corporate environments that, quite frankly, they're on the brink, right? The constant threat. I think, I agree with the idea. I mean, people are going to go for a lower number by virtue of the fact that it's a lower number, because if those are your two choices, you're at the grocery store, you're buying your groceries, what do? You try to shop and get the
Buy the name
best
brand, or you
deal.
buy
I mean,
the name
sometimes, you know what, there's a lot of,
The quandary I've been in thinking about this issue, and I've thought a lot about this particular warrant, is, am I going to come in here and vote differently than I'm going to vote in the ballot box? So
no, you should vote the way you're going to vote in the ballot box, right?
But in terms of, I understand the dynamic, but I also understand the economics of my household, and I'm inclined to support the default in the ballot box. So that's why I'm inclined to vote it here.
Dan.
It's my understanding that what the default budget is to keep everything status quo, just the way it is. The same amount of people and the same amount of positions, that's exactly what we are. Well, I think we've heard from a lot of people that they wouldn't mind shrinking that a little. And I would have liked to have seen that move on a little.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking in the means of, less police and less things like that. I think there were other places to go. But unfortunately, I think when you send that message, that's where they're going to take it from. But I'll tell you now, I'm probably going to vote for the default budget too.
One of the areas that I don't feel I got fully answered, and I take full responsibility for that, because, I mean, you need the time to delve into this stuff, and you almost need an accounting background, was this, I think it was a 4,300 account, the management services line. Almost every department had one, and they weren't in significant numbers. And Sue Hickey gave us some general categories, but I think for next year on my priority list is I want to see a breakdown of that. That seems to be one area that's somewhat discretionary, like we talked about. Salary costs and benefits are not negotiable. Once we make an agreement by contract, we're obligated. But what we spend on management and services, consultants and things of that, I think that's areas that perhaps could look at trimming a little bit back while the economy's still struggling. And I agree with you, GDP may be on the turn, but it's 6 to 24 months before you actually see that come to fruition in the household, at a minimum. So, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with what you folks have been talking about right here, so. all
at this
set.
point? Okay, so why don't we go just through the numbers here. Article 4, we have a motion on the table for Article 4A. It was moved and seconded. We've discussed it. We've gone over a lot of these things in detail at a variety of meetings and hearings. So why don't I go ahead and we'll take a vote. All those in favor of Article 4A, those in favor say aye. Those against say nay.
Nay.
That's unanimous. Do not support the town council budget as amended. So by default, the Budget Committee supports the default budget.
Should we take a vote on that just to get it on the record? I think we could.
Yep, it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
Article 4B, I'll take a motion. So moved.
So moved.
That's Jan. And second?
For discussion?
It's mastering the obvious, but just to keep the record clean, I
But I
think.
guess
I mean, if I
this
say
is my
if I
question.
don't support that, because I think that's too high too, though.
Then,
But this is my question.
We only have
Tomorrow-
two
Tomorrow
you can't
night, the
do
town
that.
council
You-
could cut another 100,000.
But that's what we're
Paul,
gonna
we're
have.
gonna be on
No, you're
record
not.
I just want to say no.
This is-
Yeah.
I think you're only supposed to do one.
You're only allowed to vote on the town budget as amended. That's why it's recommended down here. You have that, or
It's the
that's what it
default.
falls to.
Or it falls, right.
It's just
okay,
gonna fall to
okay.
that.
we got a consensus whether or not we support, we know we
Can't vote
don't
on
support
1B.
the town
Right.
council budget as amended.
Right, okay.
So that's how it reads.
Not all of us.
I think we
spend
can
our
voice
careers
our
Doing
opinion.
this, but,
But
Yeah.
it's not a votable.
yeah, that's,
Whatever.
And getting back to what Dan said, a little editorial segue is that, I raised the issue of whether we can, and I think Mike Brown brought it up, whether we can propose a number, and I don't know that this year we have the mechanism to do it, I know.
well, you certainly can bring it up at
Yeah.
the,
I brought up the issue of the municipal budget, or some towns that have municipal budget, and they propose the default budget. And I guess the question is, the formula that you come up with the default budget, is there room for interpretation in there or not? If there isn't, then it's pointless to have us do
But
it.
does it work the same way as this? You simply give them a number, then they decide where it goes?
Perhaps, but, that may be something that we look at next year. I think it's not something I want to, rush through. I mean, sometimes something sounds good and you get it on the books and it doesn't work so well in application, but.
We're basically giving the town the starting point at this deliberative session.
Yeah.
If they vote for the default budget, and we go into this deliberative session, motions can be made
Absolutely.
to remove or even add money.
well,
So it doesn't make sense to walk in there and say, here's extra money, now let's vote. Maybe we're gonna add some more stuff to
To
it.
go up from the top to the higher number, yeah.
well,
Exactly.
it would depend upon the economic environment that we're in, number one, right? So we're not in a very profoundly great economic situation in America today. So, given that backdrop, to go in, it'd be one thing if everything was wonderful and people were making great money and jobs were abundant and so forth and so on. It's not the case, stating the obvious, but the situation is this. If the conditions were great and they had a lot of good reasons that, when we felt we needed a lot more in terms of equipment and personnel on the fire side or the police side or the DPW or in the offices and whatever the case might be on the, whatever, right? That's great, but we're not under those types of circumstances. People are having a challenging time out there, and to come in at a higher budget than the lowest option we have at this point just doesn't make sense to a lot of people, so I have to heed to that. That's my opinion. We've already voted on it. We are against, we do not support the town council budget as amended at this point. Moving on to Article 5. This is to appropriate funds to the capital reserve funds to replace ambulances, highway heavy equipment, fire trucks, and highway trucks. And this is to raise and appropriate the sum set forth below. This is for ambulances, they identify $75,000 that they set aside. Highway trucks, $100,000. They have nothing for highway heavy equipment, but they have $335,000 set aside for the fire trucks. And again, I believe, after all the discussions, part of that was being set aside. I believe they anticipated wanting to prepare themselves for the need to replace the ladder truck, I believe. There were some discussions about, at least a lot of side conversations that went on, we can get into in discussion. But that is what the article is. Article 5 is for $510,000. So if passed, this article will require the town to raise $255,000 in property taxes. And that portion of this amount, of the 510, resulting in a tax rate impact of 7 cents per thousand for the FY13 budget. So with that, I'll take a motion for Article 5.
I will motion for Article 5.
So moved. Is there a second? Do I have a second? Just open for discussion.
Is this the same as the other one, that they have $255,000 left over from another fund, and they're looking for another $255,000?
This is the fund balance in amount of 255 towards this appropriation, yeah.
And then they want a reasonable.
Now, what this is.
That's half of the.
This is,
fund.
they have like a long-term plan.
So they don't
Pay-
want
To pay for
$510,000.
this equipment, I keep it half of that. To
No,
pay
they
for
want
this
two-
equipment over a 10-year span, and this, taking that 510,000 and they put that into this fund, then it'll get them back on track of their 10-year
This was that,
rollover.
yeah, this was that whole discussion where they were going over like all the funding needs, the anticipated needs in the future, the reserve, and they have so much a year, and this is what that's all about.
And
for-
even
for
with
the
this, it's
purposes.
going to be way below what they expect it to be.
Exactly.
From what they told me.
Considerably
That's right,
below.
that's right.
And if I could just point out, while the amount here is $510,000 for the whole amount, what will be raised by property taxes is $255,000. And again, that is a 7-cent tax impact. But we are falling behind on some of our safety equipment. And this, again, we're confronting that issue with saying wants versus needs. This is a need. And it's difficult for me to speak against this. That ladder truck has been discussed as a safety issue for this community. We're going to be having a lot more homes and families in the next decade. And that ladder truck is going to be a critical addition. And I think the very least thing that the taxpayers expect of us is that we provide a safe environment for them. And I personally feel that this capital reserve fund fulfills that aspect of our responsibilities.
And the other discussions that you hear around town as well is the need for, or it's been raised that there is an argument that there's a need for a tanker truck that is sufficient enough to put out a fire with sufficient amount of water supply at the ready, on site, because many areas of Londonderry do not have fire hydrants.
And most areas do.
And if you try shopping around for homeowners insurance, sometimes some of them won't insure you if there are no hydrants. So it begs the question, you know, to Lisa's point, going forward, if we should not be, at a minimum, reserving this kind of money, but perhaps it may not be enough to the point that has been raised on a number of occasions. But for me, you know, I would be in support of this article because of what's been said so far, so.
And just to complete that point, if I didn't make it before, the additional $255,000 will be coming out of that June 30th expendable fund balance. So this is where we're trying to raise the minimum that we can from our property taxes to alleviate pressure on the voters and the taxpayers, and using the undesignated fund balance at the end of the fiscal year.
I think this is just something that's gonna put you in a better position to pay as you go down the road. And I think it's something that, you better put something away, or you'll be going back to bonds.
Yeah.
So I'd be in favor of this particular article.
Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Why don't I go ahead and take a vote? All those in favor of all those in favor of Article 5, say yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Yay? Aye? All those against, say nay. Okay, that's 7-0.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I make a motion that may be out of bounds, and I hope not to ruffle any feathers?
I'm sorry?
I'm going to try not to ruffle any feathers. I'd like to make a motion that we accept public comment on these articles if it is offered, if the board is so inclined. My reasoning for that is that we have asked people to come at every meeting we've had and begged them to come and talk. And now we're telling them they can't. And I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers, but I know that there are people in the audience that have things to say. So if the board would like to entertain it, I would ask that you ask for a vote, and if
I'd
not,
just like
then
to let Mr. Douglas know that I did receive his test email.
I did as well. But if the board does not wish to entertain the comment, that's fine. I just wanted to propose it for a vote.
Yeah,
You're so inclined.
looking at the time, we are moving along. The reason for trying to minimize the timing of the public comment was, quite frankly, I anticipated longer discussions on some of these articles. That was the sole purpose for doing that, so I would welcome the idea, and you're right. We've been looking for input throughout this process. Unfortunately, we've had minimal attendance.
Well, if you made that motion, I'd be willing to second it.
No need, let's just do it. We'll open it up.
But not leave it for 40 minutes.
Well, yeah, just, all I ask
No
is any
filibustering.
comment. Yeah, let's keep it moving and certainly make a point, and then we'll move on and entertain, because,
Mr. Chairman, I'm anticipating there may be comment, but do you want it all at once, each speaker to address their particular
yeah, on a
articles, as
particular
opposed to
article,
doing it one by
But
one?
let's
Yeah.
keep it moving and get succinct, and if there are 3 people in our audience, and if 3 people want to comment on these articles, in fact, at this point, just going forward, we're going to Article 6 at this point. Why don't we go ahead and open it up to any public comment before we open it up? This is the Established Capital Reserve Fund for the Fire Department Equipment. This is $150,000 to be placed in this fund to authorize the use of the June 30th fund balance in the amount of $100,000 for this purpose, and to designate the town council as agent to expend majority vote required. If passed, this article would have an impact to, need to raise $50,000 in property taxes, and that tax rate impact would result in 1 cent per thousand on your FY13.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of Article number 6.
Before we go that, I just want to go ahead and check if there are any comments. No? Okay. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion?
Just, this one, we haven't seemed to have talked about all that much, I don't think, this year. I mean, is this the emergency equipment that is required? Have
This
we
is.
discussed that?
This is, remember all the equipment that they've been
This is the
pushing
required
off and
equipment, absolutely.
and all that stuff. and-
I think it's the amount that it is. I certainly don't have any problem
Absolutely, no.
And plus, for what it is.
giving that
This was-
fireman there.
This is
Breathing,
all-
breathing equipment,
This
things
is
of
all
that
that
nature.
for
That was
the
my
equipment that
exactly
they
the
need, that you
operating.
see the aging equipment that they had, and they. they've been pushing off.
Defibrillators and things of that nature. I mean, that's,
Yeah, replacement stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay, so any other comments at this point? I'll entertain, we got a motion, we got a second. Okay, why don't we go ahead and take a vote then? Article 6, all those in favor of Article 6, say yay.
Yeah,
Right.
Aye.
I was gonna mix it up on you guys.
you're just trying to trick us now.
I am. Okay, all those against, say nay. Okay, that's 7-0 in favor. Article 7, this is the fund, the special revenue account. This is the, to raise and appropriate the $564,244, and this is for the police outside detail fund that's already established. This is basically a self-funding item, I should point out. These services are funded through user fees and require no property tax support. So with that,
I will move adoption of Article 7.
well, let me check
sorry.
to make sure there's any input, comment. the public? No? Okay. Go ahead.
Moving
I'll
along.
entertain a
Moving
motion.
quickly along, I move adoption of Article 7.
Okay, you got a second?
Who was the second, John?
Any-
And again, this is the police outside detail, which is the airport services, and it's completely underwritten.
It doesn't actually cost us anything.
In fact, it's it's self-funded, so.
This is outside details. This isn't the airport.
These-
So
This
this
is
is not the
actually,
airport?
this is road details where,
Oh,
where outside companies
That's
will,
right.
oh, okay.
will pay for the police
this is-
officers.
Oh, okay, thank you for that clarification.
My only question is the last sentence. It's a long one. Can somebody explain
Such
that?
appropriation shall be used, that
Now, any
sentence?
surplus.
Oh, any surplus in said fund shall not be deemed part of the general fund accumulated surplus and shall be expended only after a vote by the legislative body to
Town
appropriate
council.
a specific amount from said fund. So basically, they have,
Well, for a specific purpose related to the purpose of the fund or source of the revenue.
so if they have to identify it and vote on it.
It has to be related to the function of the
If
fund
there's
itself.
extra money, they have
It
to
goes-
vote on it before they use it because it's a special revenue fund.
That's right.
You can't just take that money out, just like we've had the discussions with the cable. Correct.
All right, any other,
Just needed a little clarification.
any other discussion at this point? Any other comments, points? No? We have a motion, we have a second. I'm going to go ahead and take a vote on Article 7. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those against, say nay. That's 7-0. I'm clarifying what my vote is when I tell you
Yes, thank
7-0.
you. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Article 8, this is to fund the sewer fund. This is a $3,003,706 article, Article number 8. This is also self-funding. These services are funded through the user fees and require no property tax input, no property tax support, excuse me. This is for the sewer, so anybody with sewer service, they contribute to their sewer fees, but there's no tax impact to property taxes for this one.
Right, but we are legally required to present this to the voters in order to utilize those funds, so this is a
That's right,
good deal for the taxpayer.
yeah. It's self-funding through the sewer fund. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for Article 8.
I motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and, I'm sorry, yeah, I'll go ahead and take a vote on that. Article 8, all those in favor of Article number 8, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, say nay. That's 7-0 in favor. Article number 9, this is the fire department personnel costs and staffing levels. And this is to raise $403,665. If this article is passed, it will require the town to raise all $403,665 via the property taxes. The resultant impact of those property taxes would be 12 cents per thousand, and that's based on the projected assessed values. So before I take a motion for that, I'll go ahead and defer. Is there any input from the town on this article? Again, this is for the fire department personnel costs and staffing levels. It's $403,000, $403,665, and has a 12-cent impact.
Norma.
Carousel Court, and thank you to Chris in particular for asking you to take public comment again. It's appreciated. As I spoke at the council meeting, I am in favor of this article. The one thing that I would request, however, in lieu of any staffing decisions such as the labor agreements and this one is while on the surface it's relatively easy to see that it costs X amount of dollars and it's going to be 12 cents on someone's town tax bill, it would be really good, I think, for the council and the budget committee at the public hearing on Thursday to kind of get the town manager to lay out what the cost will be for this decision the year after and the year after. I think full disclosure is critical when it comes to these types of decisions. It feels good to do it in the year that we're doing it in for some people, and I think the additional staffing's been justified, but I think for the sake of full disclosure, we really should tell people what the true cost of this is going to be going forward. And I think the town manager and assistant town manager have the wherewithal to kind of estimate with some clarity what this decision really means. So if the budget committee can maybe, ask about that tomorrow night, I'm going to, and maybe support that effort. I think it would be wise to do before the deliberative. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment at this point? No? From the public? Okay, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for Article 9.
I move Article 9.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second, great. Any discussion?
I think I was gonna kinda ask the same question. I mean, this was I certainly not opposed to having more firemen, but this is just for 1 year, right?
Yes.
So we're not gonna have firemen for 1 year and then we don't have them the next year. You're gonna have to vote on this
It
every
would,
goes to the
it'd be,
default
it'd go to the.
It would automatically just go,
operating
so
budget
you'd end up just
following
paying for it every
It'd be
year.
another 400, actually,
Or
that
more,
plus
because they would probably get more as
whatever
the
the,
thing goes
yeah,
on, yeah.
exactly.
I
No,
was
and
gonna
whatever
ask
the
that, and I'm glad you
COLAs
did.
or whatever the collective bargaining agreement increases would be. et cetera.
This seems to me to be the hangover from, excuse the expression, from the promise that we were gonna get grants to get these 4 firefighters hired, and it was gonna be paid for 3 years. And the original proposal was 8, and then the compromise position was 4, but recognizing that 3 years would be no tax impact, that the feds would underwrite that, and then that went away.
Yeah, I'm
So,
not
I mean, I
sure.
think that's where, kind of the background for this, as I
I'm
understand it.
not sure if it was that, John, or it was more, they cut to the bone, they realized they just cut it a little too deep, and they recognized the fact that, you know what, we're running at a level of risk that might be a little bit too high.
Are you sure this wasn't the
It's
4
actually-
positions they were looking for?
It's kind of a twofold thing. I mean, you're right, John, that is part of it, but where they came up with those 8 was NFPA standards.
Correct. I
The
understood
Fire,
that.
Fire Protection Association, they have standards that towns should run at, and that's where they had that number, and that's what they're trying to build up to. We're still short of that number, even adding these four firefighters. I'm very torn by this, because the fact that it's core service. That's what we're here for in government, that's what you're looking for out of your government. However, this entire budget season, overtime. Still adding overtime here so we can backfill some of that staff again. So I'm torn, because I want the 4 firefighters, but there has to be better management on the overtime. So,
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. In fact, the overtime being baked into the general acceptance of the process versus in the private sector, you typically staff appropriate, and usually you stretch that staff to the maximum extent practical. In a Six Sigma lean environment, you simply don't have those luxuries. Everybody is expected to do overtime, but guess what? You typically aren't paid for it, because you're on salary and
Exactly.
you're putting in your 60-hour week and you call it a day. I mean, or more, and whatever it takes. So sometimes it's lost. for
this
those who have-
budget was set up on a one-for-one replacement, okay? And that doesn't always happen. I mean, and if it does, then you're short people. You're overall short people. So before we go ahead and bring that up to 11 staff, why don't we bring it to 10 staff and get rid of our overtime? And then we're talking about legitimate numbers.
I would agree. I think they're valid points. However, for the purpose of this article, I'm at a threshold that tells me that I think we've cut it to the bone. I think we're running at a risk that, I agree with the overtime comments that you're making, but we still have this issue of, quite frankly, we're running too lean on the fire side. So I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think we can address that part of this at this juncture. So I understand the concern, but,
That's why I'm torn.
yeah, I understand. But for me, I think we just need the extra personnel on the fire side, because I think we're running out of risk that, quite frankly, I couldn't sleep at night if I voted against this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Would it be possible that once we're out of the thicket of the budget season, that we have a meeting regarding this overtime? Because this is an issue that's come forward again and again during this process. We don't have the space at this point to really take that on and have an in-depth discussion. But possibly after the deliberative session and the town meeting, we would be able to come to invite the chiefs to come in and address that issue directly to the budget committee, because it's been raised again and again, and I think there's more information for us to garner here.
Yeah, clearly, I think that the way to approach this would be to, A, do what you say. You involve the right chiefs.
Yep.
You involve the town manager, you engage with the town council, and you have an exploratory discovery, if you will, of, okay, how does this really work, right? Because I don't think everybody's perfectly clear on how this really works, right, in all these discussions. And how can we go about staffing to a level that we can avoid it and maybe have some flexibility that allows a range of staffing levels rather than a fixed number, so that there may be times that, you know what, maybe you have people call in or whatever. We can discuss that in ad nauseam, excuse the lack of a better word. But for the purpose of this article, Article 9, I agree that we should have those discussions at that juncture, but to stay on track, let's focus on Article 9, and I believe we had a motion. We had a second.
Yes.
We're having discussion. Is there any other discussion specific to the passage or non-passage, or rather the support or non-support of Article 9 for $403,665? Any other points?
I just can't wait until 2014 till everybody comes up and wants to know why the budget is $400,000 more
Yeah.
than the year before.
I was scratching my head wondering why.
Hey!
Exactly.
I guess, and somebody raised it before, I guess I have an issue with, you put this on as we're gonna fund this for 1 year. Well, my understanding is once a municipal employee gets past the probationary period, you own them.
It'll get added to the
So,
operating budget the following year.
I mean, I guess I question how you put a referendum to the citizens to say, what is an appropriate level for you? Not just give them a number that's, gonna lock them in. It's presented as 1 year, but really, it's a Hobson's choice. There's no choice after that. I mean, it's automatically just added. And it's put on here to keep it outside the budget. We're gonna add this on and make it a default issue, for
Well, the
lack of a better
council
term.
did talk about putting it as part of the
I mean, I
budget. They
don't-
decided not to,
I'm not
correct?
opposed
Exactly. They advised the fire
They
department not
wanted
to.
to put it in front of the voters.
They wanted the
Right.
voters,
Yeah.
I mean,
Voters to make
I
a
don't think
choice.
most voters are going to go into the ballot booth and say, hey, let's get firefighters for 1 year
I
and
don't
get
think I
rid of
like,
them.
I don't think I like the wording. Basically, you're permanently adding 4 firemen.
I guess I know reading this, they're gonna be there forever, me personally, but I guess you're right, maybe
Lisa-
every voter wouldn't.
And Lisa's idea, I know we want to stay on target and on topic. Lisa's idea is an excellent one, because at the town council, there was discussion about all our overtime amounts being illusory. We just, consistently underfunded. Why is that the case? Should we be changing personnel procedures? Should we,
Exactly.
I mean,
We need to
let's-
explore.
Yeah, let's be realistic. I mean, and I think that's what they were saying, so perhaps a joint effort
Yeah.
in some hearings or some investigation. I think that's an excellent
But
idea.
here's something to
And-
look at too, because it's gonna bleed into the next articles.
Right.
What is limiting you here in this overtime? You don't have the personnel. You can't use part-time people. Part-time people save you money because you don't have to pay out the benefits, the retirements, all that stuff that you wouldn't under a full-time employee, all right? The collective bargaining agreements that are set in place restrict you from hiring part-timers,
This is,
okay?
right. And this is the discussion
This
that
is
came
the
up last year. I thought the call firefighter system was a no-brainer. I mean, you pay these guys to come out and train, and then whenever they show up, like a per diem basis. I mean, I voted for that last year, I guess, kind of against the tide, because I didn't see the downside. I mean, those guys have the same training, and they're not there all the time, but, this is signing on 4 people for the duration, for their careers. I don't know, I'm really worried about our staffing levels, but by the same token, that's a big nut for a long time.
Perhaps Mike had recommended that we make a request of the town manager to bring forward the costs attendant with these articles 1 year out, 2 years out, et cetera. And perhaps that's something we could apply to Article 9 as well, to say, yes, we know that this is the immediate impact, but could you also give us information on what this will be further down the road? Because again, looking at the contracts and some of the other issues, reasonable first year, reasonable second year, third year, you're tripping up.
For the purpose of this, though, we have to.
I know.
And
we
We
have
need to
to-
stay on,
For the
No,
purpose of
we have
the
to
vote, we have to stay
support or
on.
not
I
support
hear you.
Right.
No,
the
no,
article
and I-
as it.
yes.
You could
I'm
ask
just
them to
saying-
bring that to the deliberative session,
Yes,
but not to the
exactly.
vote.
Yeah.
Right, but to the deliberative session, to have that as a footnote for the taxpayers' information. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. We've had some discussion. Is there any further discussion among the committee? All right, with that, why don't I go ahead, if we're ready, and go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of Article 9, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against, say nay.
So
Okay,
who said no? Rich?
So what was that?
John?
4-3.
I said no.
What was that?
I said no.
Okay, so 3-4. Okay,
3 to 4?
3-4.
Okay. 3 to
The
4
Budget
to
Committee
no.
does not support. Okay. Article 10, appropriation of land use change taxes to the Conservation Fund and the General Fund. And basically, this is taking 100% of the 100,000 and allocating it basically to this land use fund, and then 40% of the revenues received in excess of 100,000 from the land use change tax in the Conservation Fund, which is currently totally funded. It all goes into that fund. Anything over 100,000, 40% of it, the way I read this, if I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the one where it goes into the Land Use Conservation Fund, 100% of it, and they're saying, let's put a ceiling on 100,000, and beyond that, 40% of the revenues received in excess of 100,000 would go from the land use tax in the Conservation Fund. Currently, 100%, as I just mentioned, received from that land use tax are placed in the Conservation Fund. So in essence, anything over that 100,000, 40% of it would go into the, isn't this the, forgive me,
Conservation Fund.
in the Conservation Fund, but the balance would go to the General Fund.
Yes.
Correct.
So it's a change in policy.
It's just changing how much the Conservation Fund gets, it limits it, and then it puts the other into the General Fund.
I think we lost Dan.
Well, it's tough, but they're also Tom Frieda has already said this is going to be amended on the deliberative session, or is going to attempt to amend it on the deliberative session.
Okay.
Well,
In what way?
To take almost all of the money away from the Conservation Fund.
Yeah.
right now, the Conservation Commission has a very large kitty, if you will,
Yeah,
of money
exactly.
that's sitting there.
Lisa and I talked about this a little bit on Open Space Task Force, so, I mean, you may have a better memory than I, and the discussion is at what level do we have enough open space? I mean,
Well, it's not just that. Are we going to move this
Before we
article
move
for the
on, let me
purpose of
just,
discussion?
yes, let me just go ahead and continue. The key is it's a matter of shuffling the funds from one fund reserve account to another fund reserve account. That's
Well,
$0 to the tax rate impact. However, what it does do is it enables use of funds that otherwise would be tied up for land use
Could I move the
to
article?
enable them to be used in the general fund.
Moving quickly along. Yeah, could I move the article for the purpose of discussion on the
Yep.
budget committee?
Go
and
ahead.
I will second it.
Okay.
All right, now we can discuss it further.
Yeah, so, my issue with this is, having seen what happened, in recent years with some land that had become available for the community and was not captured in time or not sufficiently funded, I would just bring to your attention that we have some reserves of property. 600 acres are gone, 643 acres are now under development plan. There are other parcels that will be coming available within the next several years. Londonderry should be responsible for our blessings. One of our blessings is, which surrounding communities do not have, Bedford does not have it, Derry does not have it, is we still have property that's open that can be set aside. And I know this is a difficult thing to discuss in times of economic want, but I would like to be part of a community that look forward to the time when there are another 1,000 families in town, and there are another 3,000 families in town, and ask ourselves whether or not the existing pool of those wooded resources, those hiking trails that we have, will be sufficient when you have that many more vehicles and that many more subdivisions and that many more businesses in town. We are responsible for the benefits that we have. We have 93. We have access to Route 3. We have the airport. We know the benefits that these will bring to the community over time. With those benefits will come a much higher traffic load. There will be many more people. I already have friends who are complaining that the Musquash is overpopulated and they don't want to hike the trails anymore because they're running into too many people. Well, let's wait until we see a little build-out on Woodmont. Let's wait until some more subdivisions go up and the pressure on those limited recreational resources becomes even more severe. And I just think that we have a window of time here where we can capture some of that acreage and set it aside. Granted, it may not benefit me, it may not benefit my children, but it may benefit someone else's grandchildren. And I think part of what we do as leaders in a community is not only to direct our attention to those issues which are pressing us now, which we're being responsible for, we're trying to hold the line, but we're also responsible for setting the tone and leaving a legacy. What is the heritage when we leave this community, however I leave the community? Will I have left behind me something that someone else's grandchildren are going to enjoy, or their great-grandchildren, or whatever? I think of the young families that I've seen out on the trails down at the south end of town, 2 kids and a dog, and mom and dad, just out on a relatively tranquil trail. I would like to have that carried forward for the next decades. And the truth is that 20 years from now, these parcels of land that are available or will be coming available will be gone. One way or another, they will be gone. And so for that reason, although I respect the intent of this is to alleviate pressure on the taxpayer, I personally do not support this change simply because we are in a window of time where we can either create possibilities and potentials for future generations, or we can say, no, pave it over, let's throw up the houses, throw up the malls, or whatever, and people can make do with what we have. So that's really, to me, that's really the philosophical discussion we're having here as expressed in Article 10.
I, on the other hand, I support this.
Yeah.
And I support this for the simple reason that if you remember about a year ago, there was the SD Lumberyard, that they paid for the easement on that, on the property. And if you remember all the articles in the paper, there was a lot of concern about the properties that were being purchased. Because they had so much money, it was just basically a free-for-all of purchasing properties that were undevelopable in the first place, basically swampland. You can't build on it anyway. There's going to be protections on that land. But we were out buying that property. So I think in this regard, I think right now we have such a large amount in that fund to keep adding to it at the rates where we're adding. I think it's a little too much. I think we have to limit that addition. Yeah, I do believe in conservation land, but it has to be limited to a point where it's respectable.
I'm in favor of this also. I don't think this puts a restriction on accumulating any more property. In no way, at least the way I read it, it doesn't say you can't buy anymore.
It's just limiting how much goes into
How much you
the
actually
Just go into the fund. Has
Correct.
no bearing on being able to accumulate any property. And from, I don't recall the actual numbers now, but one of the meetings where the Conservation Commission came up and gave the presentation on the amounts of land they had accumulated according to their plan. They had reached a fairly substantial percentage of the land area that they were looking for. in their total plans. And basically, if they're that close to what they're trying to accomplish, and this doesn't prevent them from any further accumulation, I think it could do more benefit to more things with the monies into the general fund.
Chris?
I guess I would just say to the whole budget committee that the only yay vote for this article is if you like it exactly how it's written. I would imagine that most of us are probably going to be a nay for this article, because either we want it to be more, it's being taken out of the conservation fund, or we want it to be less, that's being taken from the conservation fund. So unless somebody agrees with this article exactly.
No, I disagree again on that, because you got to look at it this way. People are going to vote after a deliberative session. You're going into this deliberative session, you're setting a baseline, and that's the way we have to look at this. We're a recommending board. That's all we do. We don't have any powers to actually do anything. We're just a recommending board. So we're recommending that you approve at least the idea of the article.
Intent.
Yeah, the intent's there. If they want to make adjustments to it at that deliberative session, by all means.
Yep.
But you're either for it or against it, and I think that's why we're sitting here and we're discussing it, to let people know and understand why we're going to vote for it or against it.
Do we know what the windfall is going to be when Woodmont's converted? I mean, it may be that 40% is equivalent to what they've gotten historically.
No, I don't think anybody
I
has
mean,
this.
that's a lot of land that's going to convert from.
I don't
what
think
you
there's
do.
enough information there.
Yeah, no, we don't, but I
To know
mean,
exactly what tax
you know,
revenue or
I
impacts
think
are gonna
both of you
have.
make a valid point, and it's a vote basically on where you want to see this issue going, whether it's to expend everything towards conservation or put some back to the benefit of the taxpayer. And if this were a rich year, I would say I'm all for, putting as much to conservation, because that's why we moved here. But this is a tight year, and something that can be revisited. It's been raised by citizens petition, and it's probably going to be amended. So, I would support it just to get the dialogue going, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I'm a bit torn. I'm an advocate for open space, and I'll be the first to admit I love to take advantage of the National Forest open space that we have, and we're lucky here in New Hampshire with a significant amount of that. And in Londonderry, we're lucky enough locally to have a significant amount of it. There is a fairly decent amount, I forget the exact amount, if somebody knows it, that'd be great, that's in the reserves already. It's not that they're stopping adding reserves. I like the ability to be able to use the funds in this particular case, to have some of them go into conservation. Whether or not the amounts are exactly, to Chris's point, what I'd like to see, I'm not so sure, but certainly it may make sense, depending on the situation year upon year, as to how much goes into the conservation fund and how much goes into the general fund. But the avenue to be able to do something along those lines, in general, I agree with. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Sure.
Yes.
I would just like to point out that the community chose this method of funding conservation in order to defray the impact on the taxpayer, in order that if a parcel of land that we now drive by every day and it is apple trees, if that land becomes available, and it is going to be a considerable amount of money, in order to prevent that from being a big hit on our budget and asking for a warrant article to bond that, what they've done is set up the land use fund. And I would just ask you, as you drive around the community for the next few days, watch how many fields you drive by, watch how many apple orchards you drive by, and ask yourself, if that land became available, would you be satisfied to see it go into development? Or is a better use of those funds, of our funds, to make sure that some of that property is set aside for future needs and future generations?
Okay.
Glenn has a comment if you want to entertain it.
Sure. I meant to do it earlier, so please come on up.
Glenn Douglas, 6 Overlook Ave. I support this. I think one of the big unknowns right now is Woodmont. There's 800 acres that are going to change from, I always forget if it's current use or in use, whatever. There could be a large amount of money that goes into the Conservation Commission. Woodmont might be tax positive, might be neutral, might be tax negative. It depends on who you listen to and when. My guess is the biggest chunk is going to come out right up front. If this doesn't go forward, that's gone. If Woodmont becomes tax negative, now we're looking at 4 firemen, and they're mumbling other fire departments, other buildings in Woodmont. You know, let the people decide if they want to fund it. If something comes up, in the old days when Max first came up, you know, that was a special meeting. We voted it then and there. In the last 2 years, taxpayers have voted down the bonds. I think there's a good chance to really be hurting next year, because I don't see the economy changing. And we're going to up the budget $500,000 with more firemen. We haven't added anything, police or fire. We've cut employees for years. And now we have a chance to put some money into the budget. If people want to come up and buy something, they can come and, you know, pound on the town council next year and say, we want to put, you know, $500,000 into the Conservation Commission budget, and then they can do with whatever they want, just like everyone else. But I'm for passing this one in one form or the other. Maybe not the percentages, but one form or the other.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I am in favor of this as well from the standpoint of a policy change. I think most people have moved here for the same reasons that have been enumerated, but also as someone who's been involved in some of the previous bonds that were passed and the supporter of open space, I also know that we've actually done a very good job of putting away a nice amount of land. So we should slap ourselves on the back for all the good work we've done. It doesn't mean that you don't revisit policies, and I think revisiting this policy for some of the comments I heard up here and also what Mr. Douglas said is appropriate at this time. It's appropriate to look at this one ongoing revenue stream and assess whether the percent that's where it's going should be changed. I'm all for that. I think we should do that with every process, every program, every department, everything that we have on the town and school side. I think that's a good thing to do. There are multiple ways to acquire open space and land. This is simply a policy change of an ongoing annuitous revenue stream. We still have the opportunity through future policymakers who are voted into office to bring forward a bond if they got the votes and they got the support and the political will. You can bring warrants forward. You can actually do one-time purchases, which we did for the Nevins land for $2.9 million, all in 1 year, approved by 92% of the voting public, to buy that land and not have it develop the way it was going to develop. There's lots of ways we can acquire open space. So I'm in favor of this policy change in one way, shape, or form, and it's just a matter of what the percent ends up being. Thank you.
Thank you. And back to the committee.
I would just like to make the comment that the town council has seen fit to establish various special revenue accounts for the purpose of overseeing longer-term investments. And in my view, conservation land and recreation opportunities for the community are one of those long-term investments.
Any other comments at this point? Article number 10. Okay, we have a motion, I believe, and a second. We've had some discussion. If there's no other discussion at this time, I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor of Article 10, please let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against?
Nay.
Okay, that's 6-1. moving on to Article number 11. And bear with me for a moment. Article number 11 is to ratify basically our support for the collective bargaining agreement between the AFS CME Local 1801, the town of Londonderry, in the town of Londonderry. This particular article is to support this, to ratify the collective bargaining agreement. In year one, there is a zero tax impact. In year two, and I'm reading right off of the article itself, which is what we're looking at. In year two, so FY13, there's $0 impact. FY14, there is a 1 cent dollar impact. And year 15, fiscal year 2015, there'll be another penny impact per thousand. So in a nutshell, if passed, this article will require the town to raise an additional $6,764 in property taxes, resulting in a tax rate increase of less than a penny in FY13. So even though they say zero above, it's really something, but it's something south of a penny, not identified here in FY13, based upon the projected assessed value. So that's where we stand at this point. Article 11, it's to raise and appropriate $6,764 for the fiscal year 13 budget, with the understanding looking forward to fiscal year 2014 and 15, there's also a penny each year of impact. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion to discuss the article, accept the article.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah. In regards to the collective bargaining agreements for this year, there is considerable costs here on each one of these that really have to be looked at closely. One of my biggest questions is every bargaining agreement that has come up or that gets denied falls under an evergreen. My question here is the evergreen eliminated from this contract? Does anybody have that answer?
I do not. I do have an answer on the school side, but I don't have an answer on the town side.
And
Yes.
similarly, what is the cost of approving this versus staying with the current
Yeah,
contract?
you anticipated my question, same thing, is so we're better off, with a very minor increase percentage-wise here, as opposed to living under what's currently in existence,
Oh, see, the thing is we don't even know.
right?
Has anybody received any more information on
I have not.
these collective bargaining agreements? So how can we, in good conscience, approve a contract that we don't have any knowledge of what's in that?
And what message do we say if we abstain to them because we have lack of information, or we defer? The problem is if we defer until after we have the meeting, let's have the meeting directly following that budget.
Thursday night's meeting.
Thursday night's meeting,
Okay.
and
Absolutely.
then see if we can get some answers to these questions, and then make the call at that point. So we can certainly
So
have a meeting.
Thursday, so let's get this straight. Thursday, we need to have our vote to go onto the ballot, correct?
No,
Friday.
Friday. Okay.
So-
So we're gonna get a,
because the deliberative session, the ballot doesn't come until after deliberative session. Our vote will be depending on what
No,
the public
they
amends.
need to send to the printer Friday.
the warrant,
Okay,
because
Again,
that's gonna go to
but the
the,
ballot itself, you're talking about the warrant, but the ballot itself
Mhm.
could have a number that says $100
everything's
or
gonna
default
change.
budget.
Everything could change after the
That's what I'm
deliberative
saying.
session
After
with
the
this
deliberative
year's.
After the
Yeah.
deliberative session.
However,
That's what I'm talking
something,
about.
something
We're
has to
going
go to
into
that
the
deliberative
deliberative
session.
Right.
Right.
At what
And that goes
point,
to the
You're
printers
talking about the
Friday.
book. You're talking about the book.
That goes,
Okay.
yes.
Sure. Okay.
So we need to have our recommendations
Gotcha.
by this Friday. So we have a choice. If we do not feel comfortable voting on these at this point in time, we can
Does that
defer
go
it
for
till
11, 12,
after.
and 13?
Yeah,
Excuse me?
11, 12, and 13?
yeah, all three articles.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So if we are going to do that, then we would defer our support, our vote whether or not we support Articles 11, 12, and 13, we would have to have a meeting, and we'll have to have something posted very quickly.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Post haste.
If we choose to do that and just stick around after that meeting to have a follow-on budget meeting, we've done that in the past. To have a follow-on budget meeting to address those, because they're valid concerns. that,
Absolutely.
Quite frankly, to more or less blindly vote on this at this point.
That meeting could actually take place on Friday at 1 o'clock in the morning after that starts.
Oh, please. That's not necessary.
No, it's going to be posted for Thursday. It has to be on Thursday.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Chairman, maybe inviting Sue Hickey or Dave Karen to, to meet with us and,
Well, they're gonna be there on the Thursday
right, but-
meeting,
but our
and
sub-
have them be there for after.
for after.
Absolutely.
Exactly, because if there are particulars that we have questions about.
Can we,
That's
Mr.
right.
Chairman, could I just suggest that whatever issues we have, because we are considering abstaining on, 3 major items, whatever questions that we have that we want answered on Thursday night, is that something that we could provide to the town manager, to Sue Hickey and to Dave?
Absolutely.
And ask them to have those answers available for us on Thursday? I think to just to give them a little lead time.
Give
and
them a runway.
time to- Yeah.
And the biggest is, what Rich said was the evergreen clause. I mean, are we doing ourselves a disservice if we don't recommend approval of
That's a
this?
good point.
And, yeah, exactly. What's the cost to the taxpayer if we,
We,
Say no.
if the voters say no to this,
Right.
what's
What
it cost
happens?
us?
Yep.
Which way's gonna cost us less? Is there, because if there's an evergreen and there's something else that's gonna occur, I don't know enough about it to give that answer, right?
So in other words, if we vote to abstain Article number 11, 12, and 13, this would be in the
No.
interest of 11.
We're not abstaining, we're not voting, this is a no vote, we're just not gonna
We're
vote
simply not going to take them to vote at all.
until Thursday night.
Oh, okay.
We're
All
gonna
right.
address it Thursday
Okay.
night. So we'll address
So
these,
I'm assuming we withdraw our motion and second on this article then.
yep. We'll withdraw the
We'll
motion
withdraw
on these.
Chris's
In fact, we'll
motion
skip
and
Articles
second.
12 and 13
Yeah.
for the same reason.
Okay.
We need to have a little bit more detail on those.
Okay, no worries.
And primarily, the question is the impact if they are not passed, and, based on evergreen issues and so forth. Anything else on those before we move on, since we're gonna postpone that vote on those 3 articles? Article 14, this is,
Housekeeping, basically.
yeah, it's whether or not we support authorizing a special meeting for cost items, and I'll take a motion on that.
I move Article 14 as
Okay.
written. This is simply to say if any of the contracts are defeated, that we would authorize the town council to call a special meeting at the appropriate time to consider those items only.
Yeah, whether or not we support the town council to call a special meeting at its option to address the 3 articles that we just postponed.
That's what I was gonna say. Dan, second.
So,
Thank you.
we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on this? No? Out in the audience, opportunity?
Just given the council flexibility to
Yeah.
accommodate what happens at the
Exactly.
deliberative session, so.
Okay,
All right, yeah.
any other comments?
Or
No.
the-
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Okay, that's 7-0 in favor. Supporting Article 15, to establish a capital reserve fund for cable division equipment. And this is to see if the town will vote to establish, pursuant to RSA 35:1, a capital reserve fund for future equipment replacement at the Capital Access Center, to raise and appropriate $200,000 for said purposes, to authorize the use of the June 30th fund balance for this purpose, and to designate the town council as agents to expend. If passed, this article will require the town to raise $0 in property taxes, resulting in a tax rate of $0 in FY13 based upon the projected assessed values. So, why don't I go ahead and take a motion,
I'll make a motion to move it.
and do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I'll open up to discussion.
Uh,
Any comments?
Yeah, I'd like to start this one. In regards to taking that 200,000 and appropriating it for a separate fund balance just for the cable division. I'm inclined to vote against this. I'd rather see it just in the general fund, or keep it where it's at, rather than just having it there specifically for the cable. I'd like to be able to use that elsewhere. That's a small building over there. I know they need equipment and stuff, but I think we'd be better off to purchase as we go than building it up. Take it right out of the fund when it's
Out of the
needed.
general fund type of
Yes,
thing?
out of general fund.
Okay. Chris?
Just as a discussion, because I'm truly not decided on this, what happens is the same thing that happened when the roads were budgeted for the general budget and the council decided just not to fund it? Shouldn't we
Quite
have
honestly,
something dedicated
I'm
to
okay
this?
with that.
You're
too.
okay with that? Okay, then I'm just having a discussion, exactly. I'm not deciding. It's a discussion.
Don't they
Okay.
get some kind of thing from the cable for
Well, it's a-
equipment?
They used to.
So right now, there's $500-something thousand. They were going to take
They
200
have,
of that and put
they
it
have
in
a budget
this, right?
that's, basically, they get money in from cable franchise fee. That's that 3.5% of the 5% total collected. They have a budget to work with. I can't see why they can't appropriate that money over time for replacement costs.
But that was what was changed at I believe it was the last town council meeting, that we got the memo that because the town had not officially voted to establish the cable reserve fund, that money is now no longer in the hands of the cable, and they do not have that as a viable resource. This capital reserve fund has been put in because there was, as soon as that came out, citizens immediately came forward and said, we're going to bring forward a petition article, and I think the town council said, don't worry, we will give you a capital reserve fund to cover those, because this is a service to the community. Yes, it is a small building, but my understanding is that what we offer Londonderry is well in advance of what other communities have. And equipment for this, for example, the equipment that records these meetings and broadcasts them live, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars here. This isn't something I think that we can just roll into our annual budget and ask the taxpayers to fund. I think the use of a designated capital reserve fund to be expended for this purpose is a legitimate response to removing from the cable division that income that they have been enjoying for some years now.
I think that the cable company is one of those things that's a nice to have, and not a necessary.
Well,
I have difficulty with it.
here's a couple things.
Yeah.
Here's our crowd tonight, and thank you guys for coming, but these cameras restrict people from coming here, because they can stay home and watch it, but you don't have input from the people anymore.
Yeah.
So
You get live
it's like a
feeds,
necessary
tweets,
evil.
or,
People want to know what's going on, but there's no longer any input because of it.
Unless
Well,
we
So
wanna
you
go to
gotta look at it
webinars.
from that's.
if my Comcast bill goes up anymore, this channel's gonna be dark, because
But that said, that was actually my point. We can now
Wow.
watch these meetings
Yeah.
online, so even if
Yeah.
we don't have cable, we are using this service now.
yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is new in the last couple of years.
Maybe my intention is out of spite.
I throw out a devil's advocate, point for discussion. I think Chris did the same. I thought that this 200,000 was kind of I don't want to call it a compromise of an olive branch, but I think there was, 575, odd for Dottie's budget, and then it was, well, if we're going to take money and move it to general fund, we're going to allocate a certain amount that remains yours to
Of
keep.
the funds generated from the cable
It
access
is
fees.
cable money.
It is
And
cable
so, that part of it, I understand.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know whether things over there are obsolete or what needs replacement at what value, and
We did have some input on that.
we did.
And there were
we did.
some,
I just
some
can't,
issues
I didn't
with
take
some of
great
the
notes
equipment.
on it, so if any of you can refresh my memory, I'll be happy to.
Yeah, there were some cameras and so forth that were aging, a number of equipment. There's the whole nice-to-have versus a must-have argument that's valid at this point. There were arguments about, cable funding coming from a cable access, whether or not it should be used for any other purpose, and that whole discussion. There were a number of areas of concern from a number of citizens that may question whether or not it's infringing on their, right to free speech or whatever, and a variety of these you know,
And we'll hear that
situations.
Thursday
Yeah.
Yeah, and that may come up
That's
time
why
and
we
again.
should-
I mean, it's
Right to
arguable
free
whether or
speech
not.
and right to free
What
media.
did we
Certainly
think of when we
never
wrote the
ceases to amaze me the
Constitution
interest that brings up
of these
every year.
United States?
We can't alter the
Every year.
Constitution. Let's stay on this article.
No, I know.
Exactly,
Last time I checked, when the Constitution was written and the amendments were written,
yeah.
there was
We
no
might
cable
want to try,
access.
but we can't do it.
But again, I think one of the things to concentrate on is that these are going to be considerable outlays of funds, and a reserve fund like this is going to defray the impact on the taxpayer, and I think that that's a valid,
But-
that's a valid goal.
I
But
think,
that fund can't be touched once it's in under cable division.
But-
So that will build
Till the
up, just like,
Conservation Commission.
I was just gonna say that, it's gonna turn into the conservation
This is
fund that
one
builds
year.
and builds and
They may
builds.
get this
Nobody
year
can
and
touch
never
it.
again.
Right.
They may
Yeah.
get this year and never again.
Possible.
So it wouldn't
no,
affect-
this establishes a
possible.
a reserve fund of $200,000, and that's the start this
Right.
year. Now, every year,
has
there
to
may be another article
Yep.
that has another amount in there, in up or down, or whatever it turns out to be.
Maybe.
I mean,
Is
from
there
my
anything-
perspective,
Built a humongous studio over there.
But here's the
Stop
question, is there anything over there right now that requires $200,000 to be set aside?
There are 3 cameras.
there were, I don't know how
Those are
much they
expensive cameras.
But
$200,000.
But I have an actual
$75,000.
question. Didn't this come up, and I have the book down there, isn't there money budgeted in the actual budget that they presented for that equipment this year as well? Or am I making
I
that
think
up?
there's,
There were some items.
Yes, there is. There's a-
$28,000,
Yeah.
There is.
Like, I think, forget
Payment
about
talking
franchise
about
fees
equipment
of it,
each
and I think
year.
they get something from the cable company specifically for
Correct.
This,
Yes.
this was brought up for, I remember people bringing up that what happens if a roof needs to be put on to the cable?
That's right, that's right. They're trying to
It's a
reserve,
what happens.
it boils down to this. You need to reserve, if a community decides that they want to maintain something that, in my opinion, they do provide a valuable service, okay? That's one person's opinion. How we go about funding it is another discussion. Their proposal is in Article 15 to start a reserve fund for a variety of things that need to be fixed. So we as a community, if you vote to support this, it's a matter of, you know, philosophically, whether or not you support having cable access in town and in a way to fund its needs going forward in anticipation of future requirements. So to me, a vote to support this is just to support whether or not you believe that capital reserve fund should be held aside from the cable access fees that anybody with cable pays, to make sure that, you know, we already have this investment in town. Do we want to maintain it and preserve it? And if not, what are we going to do with that facility over there? I mean, it's already there.
maybe they could use it instead of a pavilion for the school.
Oh,
According to our budget book, according to the book, that's okay. As long as I'm reading this right, there's $52,000 in the budget for equipment this year,
Okay.
including the new 3 camcorders and microphones and everything else. As long as I'm reading it right. So my question,
$200,000
the
was
first day we
geared
had this
towards
discussion was, why is
an
all this money
emergency
sitting
fund.
there? That was my question the first day. Why is
Yeah.
there $507,000 sitting there and there's money budgeted? So I tend to agree with you. I don't know that I have a problem with the fund itself. I think it's too high. I guess that would be my opinion.
Okay. Any other comments at this point?
I'm going to support this at this funding level based on the memo that we received in response to Chris's inquiry a couple of meetings ago regarding the high cost of those, and $58,000 I don't think covers one of them, but that's a difference in recollection of details, so.
Yeah, the reason why I'd be leaning towards supporting Article 15 is because we do have the investment. It's there. And quite frankly, I want to make sure that we have adequate funding set aside so that if we need to repair something, a roof or whatever, we start setting aside. Now, whether or not the
But you just set
200,000 is...
aside on,
If we're going to set aside, whether or not 200,000, and this is the methodology to do it, it's arguable, why not just take it out of a general fund and have it funded that way and just make sure that, you know, if you're gonna maintain, support the access center that way. But the problem is there's a lot of dispute that I've heard over cable fund access fees being melded together with taxes, and the argument of a dog license is valid, or you know, the same way, or other fees that come into the town are in a variety of ways are a valid argument. But to me, if it's cable access funds coming through for people who pay for cable, a certain amount of those dollars should go into, if we choose as a community to maintain a cable access center, which I think we've done, then we have to preserve that investment. And to me, it makes appropriate sense to reserve $200,000 in a capital reserve fund for the cable division for that purpose, because you're allocating a reserve to make sure that should things come up, now it may be equipment, it may be something happens to the building over there and they need to do something, there may be ongoing things, and this could very well fluctuate year after year.
It's just that's a lot of money.
It is, but it's a $0 tax impact.
Well,
It's being funded through the cable access fees, and so the offsetting argument is, okay, if those funds weren't going here, they'd go into the general fund, which could otherwise be used for other things.
exactly.
That's the
And
part
that's-
that,
and this is my point.
In fact, this authorizes the use of the June 30th fund balance, that's the undesignated fund balance, the UFB that we've discussed for other things. And that is, designate the town council as agents to expend. That is why this article will raise 0 in property taxes and have 0 tax impact. So really, what you're voting for here is the policy. Do you want to set some funds aside for this purpose, whether it's the roof or it's major equipment purchases, that will alleviate some of the pressure on the taxpayers, so you're not gonna have a $100,000 bond because a roof failed. So I think it is a philosophical issue, but we as a budget committee should be attending to the fact that this is basically a 0 impact for the taxpayer.
You also just requested a $200,000 expendable maintenance trust fund, and now you're looking for $200,000 set aside for one of the smaller buildings in the town. And I think it's an excessive amount of money to set aside for that cable building. That's the way I look at it.
okay.
So,
As far as the roofs and everything else, I feel like that come out of the expendable maintenance trust fund for the town anyway, not from this trust fund.
And I'm sorry,
This
but the cable
designates-
access roof is not gonna cost $200,000.
Yeah, the article
No,
itself.
who knows?
The article itself
It will.
designates that the function of this fund is for future equipment replacement at the cable access center. So that's the language of the article, just to clarify that apparently the
Thank you.
roof wouldn't be under there,
Thank you.
or over there.
We get carried away with our examples of use.
Yeah.
you noted.
Fair enough.
Even worse.
Do I have any input? I'd like to open it up to anybody in the audience if they have any input to this article. No? No?
Sure.
So, if we're ready to go ahead and make a vote and chips fall where they may, so be it. Article 15, we had a motion, we had a second. All those in favor, go ahead and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, so that's a 2 to 5, and the Budget Committee does not support. Article 16, establish roadway maintenance trust fund. This is to see if the town will, pursuant to RSA 3119A, vote to establish the expendable trust fund to be called the roadway maintenance trust fund for the purpose of maintenance, replacement, removal, or improvement of the town's roadways, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $250,000 to be placed in this trust fund, to authorize the use of the June 30th fund balance in the amount of $250,000 for this purpose, and to designate the town council as agent to expend, and a majority vote would be required. If passed, this article will require the town to raise $250,000 in property taxes, resulting in a tax rate impact of $0 in FY13 based upon the projected assessed values.
And again, that's because we'll be using the June 30th fund balance in the amount of $250,000.
Do I have a motion?
Make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by John.
Then I'll second it.
Great. Discussion?
This is the companion to Article 2, right? I mean, instead of bonding $1 million, the town council's preference was to bond 500 and put 250 in maintenance trust funds, so going forward, we can 750 total, so we can kind of start learning how to pay as we go.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I'm in
It
favor of
works with both, but in the case where one gets rejected, you still have the option where you at least have something from the other one. You know?
And this,
They do
does
work in
fund
conjunction.
at the level below the $1 million original bond issue. So they have traded down, and there was extensive discussion on the town council. How can we stop funding these maintenance projects through the bonding process and paying that interest, although granted it's at a fairly insignificant rate now, still, we don't have bonds that are jumping off right now. So this is an attempt to kind of be responsible, look toward the future, and again, alleviate some of the pressure on the taxpayer.
Live within our means,
Live within our means.
or work in that general direction.
Yeah, this is that trough that they talked about in terms of getting through the low point, in conjunction with the previous article we discussed. The article, which one was it? 2. Article 2. Okay. Any other comments from the committee? I'll open it up to any comments from the public. Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. Article 16. All those in favor, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against, say nay. 7-0 in favor, support. Article 17, and that's a redistricting. I don't think we need to adjust that. And Article 18, transactions. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We're deferring those 3 items to Thursday evening after the town meeting. So with that, we'll be moving on to the school district warrant articles. And
Well, not only that, but wouldn't you have to pay the representative?
does anybody need to take a quick break? I know I just need a drink of water. I'll be right back. So just excuse me for one moment. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
If you had 2 districts.
So with the school district side, we have a number of articles here that we need to address as well. The first of which that we will address is Article 2, which is the general fund operating budget, with a school board budget as recommended. This is the school board's budget. It is $64,716,379. It is below the default budget, which the default budget is $65,072,588. The school board's budget, as amended, has an estimated tax impact of $12.25 per thousand. The default budget has an estimated tax impact of $12.36. So we have a default budget that's higher than the school board's proposed, their budget as recommended. So those, what I'd like to do is now go ahead and take a motion on the operating budget for Article 2A, and that is the school board budget as amended.
A motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll open this up for some discussion.
I'm again at the issue where I don't like either number. And I find it difficult to vote on it. I would like to not vote for the one, and I would not like to vote for the other. I think they're both too high. Not that that has any bearing on anything.
Unfortunately,
Well, for the
it's
lesser
not
two
our
evils.
choice.
But it's
right
my
here.
freedom of speech, and I'm using it.
I second.
What we have here is you have to vote for the lesser of 2 evils. You know, you don't like the numbers because you think they're spending too much money, right?
I think they're spending too much money. I think they have too high of a want list. I think they're overstaffed. And I think they do a good job, but I just don't, I think there's just too much there.
I mean, here's my thing. We identified a couple $100,000 in cuts and found out that it's not going to matter this year. It's not
Well,
going to
that's
matter
the
until
whole
next
thing.
year.
It's not going to matter next year, but it is going to matter eventually. You've got to pay
Eventually, it's
for it.
going to matter, correct. But I don't know what power we have to specifically.
Well, we
you know,
don't
if
have
we
any. All we can say is we don't want
But if
it.
we recommend cut $200,000, it's not going to get cut from the
And you
capital
don't-
lease budget. It's going to get
That's
cut from
not- that's right.
something else.
That's right.
That's the issue with the school board budget to me.
Well, it's an issue with every budget. As an advisory body, we're recommending a bottom line, and the administrators and the staff are going to be the ones to determine where that comes. But that's true in both town and school district. That's
Becomes
not
just,
unique to this.
becomes just a stick in the eye, you know? We're gonna give you less, so you figure it out.
But
and
it's
there-
true, you could comb through that budget, and you
Yeah.
can find a
Absolutely.
few $100,000
Yeah.
things that don't affect jobs, education, or programs, but they're gonna put it in there anyway.
Right, and they put
And
it
if
right
you do
in.
take the money away from them, they're gonna get rid of programs, they're gonna get rid of jobs.
Yeah,
Well,
and they put it right in, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
They put it right into the general fund budget, so that if it was a special article, you'd be able to vote up or down, you know, as you see fit, but because it's in the general fund, and they stay below that default number, those are your two choices.
That's
You
right.
can make recommendations, but, you know, we've brought this stuff up throughout the budget hearings, you know, asking about, you guys brought up some
Yeah,
great
and you
points
get,
about the
well, that doesn't
custodian
affect
and
it this year.
about capital
Don't worry about
leases,
that this year.
but, you know,
Well, the truth is, it's the job of the administrators to determine how to dispose of the funds made available to them. And you found a list of items that you could live without. Their list of items they could live without was actually longer, judging from the default to this, but it was not the items that you perceived as worthy of a cut. So that's just the situation of the advisory body. I mean, you did a tremendous amount of work, and I applaud both of you for coming up with that list. I mean, it took a lot to comb through the budget and to find those items, and I do think it's valuable, but just as with the town, we can suggest, but they will make the ultimate
Well, it just drives me
determination.
crazy.
My problem is that
It's my money, and I wanna know where
we go
it
into the
goes.
ballot box and we vote for a budget, and the town is going to, excuse me, the school is going to set up a capital lease for 3 years, and we're not voting on a 3-year budget. We're voting on a 1-year budget, and we can't control. It just seems very odd to me that it's not a separate warrant article on the capital leases. I guess that's what seems a little
that's what
weird to
bu-
me.
it feels like- then that
because as long
seems
as
to
it
always
stays below
be
default.
the answer to the question you get. It's not gonna hit you this year, but we'll get that information to you.
But you
Those
also
always
heard
seem
what
like
they
the
said
two
the other
answers.
night. If we vote for the default, we're not getting any of the capital leases.
If you vote for the default?
Higher.
Right, because they're just gonna use the amount of money that you just gave them.
And just
For
do
those.
it.
That's like slapping somebody on the hand and saying, here, here's extra money. If you vote for the default, that's the problem.
History will show anytime you give government money,
They
they will
use
spend it.
They'll spend it, yeah.
I'm government, please give me money. Glenn Douglas,
Cutting
6
Douglas.
6 Overlook Ave. Just a quick, maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but the public hearing for the budget is tomorrow night. The school board will adjust that number up or down, and then you will have to vote again to
We
approve the number. So you could walk in tomorrow and say, the budget committee really thinks this needs to be $100,000 less because of X, Y, and Z, needs to be 200,000 more because of X, Y, and Z. The same thing with the town budget. I mean, you could have walked in there and said, we think this is too high. We want to be below default. Because you got to do this again. You're going to have another meeting before the 13th, I think.
You can
We-
say you think it's too
we
high
don't
because X,
have
Y,
to.
and Z, but then they'll
Yes, you
cut
do.
A, B, and C.
This is what we're voting on.
We can
This
make
number.
recommendations.
So if the town, if the school tomorrow, throwing it out there, if 100 people show up and say, we want a $500,000 increase, what are you going to propose?
We've proposed, we agreed with this number.
But you don't agree with theirs. You're not going to take their number as of tomorrow into any
We may
consideration?
take another vote.
We may
take another vote, but what we're trying to do tonight is we're trying to get a feel for where do we stand as of right now? This is what we have. If we have to vote again because we need to address it, we'll address it. If we have to stay for an extended meeting tomorrow evening as well, even though we don't have time to give notice to do such a thing, so be it, to take a vote.
No. You cannot stay for a meeting tomorrow night if you don't get
91A.
notice.
We got to post it.
Well, we can do it right in the meeting. We could take a poll right in the combined session.
I don't believe so.
We should get guidance.
did
on that.
last
I'm
It'll
not
be after,
sure.
And we can meet
done that.
Thursday, we can
We've done
post
that.
it tomorrow.
We've done that in the
After
past.
but only
We
if
actually did
post.
that.
All I'm saying
during-
is I'm hearing all this discussion about we can't recommend anything, but you're saying we have to vote on A or B. Why not go in tomorrow night and say, we think it should be less? It has, you have to give a final approval on the number.
We're running out of time to go down this path. We've had numerous meetings to date to get to a number where we're at today. We're just trying to see where we're at and vote whether or not we support what we have in front of us and take it from there.
And traditionally,
Thank you, Glenn.
yeah, and traditionally, we get these, responses as to what's going to be cut. And I'm not sure I heard, I think Nate said if you cut 200,000, that's a whole different analysis. I'm not sure what that analysis is. What does that mean? Because I think Dan's mentioned this earlier. They say we're going to cut band, we're going to cut this, and things that nobody really wants to see
There was a
cut
very long
instead of-
list that
yeah.
was
You gave us
clearly
a list the other
identified.
night.
Yeah,
And
yeah, shock and awe.
it was, yeah. You weren't at that
I was not
meeting,
at that meeting.
so
The way
rather
that,
than
the way
rehash
that
it here.
the way that I understand it and what it's always told to me is all we can do is recommend a number. And after that, we have
That's it.
very little say in what it is.
We-
So, yeah, we
we
can go in there tomorrow
recommend
night
what
and say
our-
we want it to be $1 million less, but other than that, we have no say where that goes.
Yeah, quite frankly, I mean, I want to go on the record of, I support the school district. I think they've done a great job of coming in under the default budget. I understand all the arguments that a lot of people bring up, but we got to remember what the value is that our school district brings to the table, all right? When you compare our school district with a variety of other school districts around, you can do that in a number of ways. I did my own way. Total budget, all-inclusive, all in, divide by the number of students, you come up with a per-student cost. And quite frankly, I know there's a lot of arguments to justify a balancing methodology, et cetera, take out transportation and so forth. Bottom line is, we as taxpayers pay this bottom line number out of our taxes, $12.25 per thousand out of our tax rate. What do we get for $12.25? Well, we get a school district that, in my opinion, based on what I've seen over the past 3 years, and many years being involved with a variety of things, has done an excellent job, very well run. They do a lot of things in the performance of Lean Six Sigma-like activity, even though they don't address it that way. They do a lot of activity that, quite frankly, is more unique to school districts than it is in business. So there are a lot of arguments for and against, a lot of different positions, and I understand all that. The bottom line is, given the money that they spend, they're roughly middle of the road by comparison of about 20 different relatively similar-sized communities, some slightly higher, some slightly lower. They're middle of the road in terms of overall budget by comparison. They excel in terms of delivery of what they have for students graduating and moving on to colleges, et cetera. So they're delivering a product, if you want to put it in terms of business, that is, in my opinion, a very good value.
I think the school does a very good job, but to put it in terms of a product, a Porsche would get me to work great. My Dodge gets me there just fine.
This is a Chevy.
Yeah,
They're middle of the
it's
road.
definitely-
They are not the Cadillac. Even though a lot of people like to think that, if you look at the budgets of other communities for similar populations, I've done the math, I don't want to go through it again tonight. I'm sure you guys don't want me to go through it again tonight. Right? You have a significant comparison that I've done.
You know what, it might be the middle-of-the-road model, but it certainly has all the options.
For a very good
Yeah.
price.
At a very good.
Very,
I mean,
nice way to put it there. That was,
Keyless entry and everything.
the thing is this, right? They're in the middle of the road. Now, nobody likes to pay the amount we have to pay, right? But the bottom line is, it's not extravagant to what some people might argue. But comparatively speaking, now I ran the numbers. It was a fair comparison. Total budget divided by number of students.
But do you think they could do it for less?
Do I think anybody could do things for less? Yes, yes. Do I think I want them to?
Yes, yes.
I don't think I want to see us cutting the school district
Well,
any more, let me finish, any more than what they've continued to have done. There have been lots of arguments about the numbers of people laid off over the past few years, and there's some debate on that. Irregardless, they have laid off a number of FTEs, right? Yes, student enrollment has continued to diminish, and it may get to a threshold one day where, you know what, it may make sense to actually close an elementary school, because
Or a
enrollment,
kindergarten.
they may be able to eliminate that whole thing. Do I think it's now? No, right? Do I think we're continue to go down this path if enrollment trends continue that way? Perhaps, right? But at this juncture, given the number of schools in our school district, comparatively speaking to other towns with similar population, right? Similar size student enrollment, similar size number of buildings of schools that they operate in, right? Elementary, middle, and high school, right? Including kindergarten. When you do the comparative that way, and you look at the budget that we have, number of students that we have, it is my opinion, and my opinion only, I'm just speaking for myself here, that I believe our school district does a phenomenal job at a relatively reasonable price. They're in the middle of the road in terms of price, if you want to put it in that terminology. They are not the Cadillac, they are the Chevy. They're not the Hugo either.
You know,
'Cause
Chevy makes Cadillac.
They, in my opinion, they're middle of the road in terms of cost and expenditures. They excel in terms of delivery.
I don't totally disagree with you. I think the school does a great job.
Not totally.
I just think that they have a very large want list, and I think they pass it off as, okay, but this isn't hitting it this year, and it isn't hitting it this year, but eventually it will. And what happens is when that gets in there, you've done it. Now you have to pay for it.
With all due respect, why haven't you said this at any of the meetings?
Excuse me.
I have.
Okay, that's what I'm just, we have these very strong
Chris,
opinions today, and
I
we
have
haven't
said it.
said them.
Lisa was saying,
Yeah.
Because I'm
I-
I'd like to keep some.
I just want to make 2 points. One of them is regards the downshift in costs from the state level. That includes a reduction in catastrophic aid from 100% to 60%. That's a loss of $223,000. Teacher retirement, as we know, we had to refund this over the summer, $601,000. Voc Ed, reduction in state support, $87,850. And Voc Transportation. That totals $917,000 that Londonderry itself is being asked to absorb as a result of pressure coming from Washington and from Concord. In addition to that, there was a 19% increase in the statewide property tax, which is reflected on this, is the equivalent of $616,000. The budgets that we're looking at are absorbing the impact of that and still coming in under default. The total impact at local level is $1.5 million. So I hear what you're saying. I know this is an extraordinary school system, but I believe that they are delivering value for every penny we save. And I just wanted to make one comment about staff reductions. And Glenn, I apologize I didn't get to this sooner. The equivalent in this memo of FTEs is only 122. The reason for that is it excludes all federally funded positions such as the special ed and also the Title I. So my understanding, the explanation that I received at the meeting was, but there have been 122 full-time equivalent reductions since 2006.
I'd just like to say, Lisa, that I don't think that they should reduce any staffing. They shouldn't lose any teachers. They shouldn't cut any programs. I don't think any of that. And just so you know, I'm not happy with the way Washington or Concord's doing anything right now either.
Yeah, but the reality is that our school district is going to have to absorb those funding realities, whether we're happy about it or not.
Rich.
Just something to keep in mind, too. We're talking about default budget against the superintendent's budget, all right? That default budget, where does it come from? Again, it's from the year prior, 2.5% above the year prior. Right, we've had a drop in enrollment. It doesn't take into account the loss of state funding or federal funding either. But we're still pretty close to default, even though we have that huge drop in enrollment every year. So the things you want to keep in mind. You have a great point, Dan, that there's a lot of extra spending here that, quite honestly, is not necessary. So, and they brought up a good point, Yeah, we're willing to come in and approve this budget, but let's make some recommendations.
And it won't hit it this year, but it'll hit it next year. And then that year, they'll tell you, we can't do anything about it because we've
It's
already made
already
the
in there.
commitment to spend this money.
Right.
And then it'll go up and up and up. And now you're paying more for that great service that you're getting now. Maybe you have less kids, maybe there's less teachers, and now you're paying more for it.
The only way to really have some significant impact if you are going to reduce this budget is you need to talk about classroom size and teaching, cuts in staff. Because that's where the money is. That's where the real money is. The bulk of the budget is in their labor force, their staff, their teaching staff, right? So if you're going to go down the path of, look, we need to cut, or we recommend we cut $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, whatever one may argue. Yeah, you can have the hit list of all these scary cuts of all the things that this town, quite frankly, has repeatedly shown that they want, okay? Well, those things cost money, and so then it's a matter of get the best value you can for what you'd like to see in your school district. And I think they've been delivering on a pretty good value. The math tells me that, comparatively speaking. Now, you could dig deeper and say, regardless of any comparative, I still want more. I want better value. That's a fair argument, right? And that's one that you make, and I understand that. To me, Article 2, we have a choice of A or B, right? And we need to decide whether or not we support that A, right? And then,
Well, I can tell you that I'm probably going to support A, but I can also tell you that I'm not going to like it.
fair enough.
And we're not looking for the big cut either. Sometimes it's a matter of principle, Todd. It's not about the total amount being taken off the top, okay? And just like you said, the first thing you go to is you gotta eliminate personnel because it's 85% of your budget. But just because you have a little bit of space in between default and where you land doesn't mean you go out and buy 450 cases of highlighters because you have the extra money, or a boom lift, or video equipment that's unnecessary at this point. That's what I think Dan's getting at. The groundskeeper. Is this a time to be adding personnel? Is it really, really necessary this year? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think they do a
Depends on
great
who you
job.
talk to.
Don't get me wrong. I think the school board does a great job. The superintendent, the school board, they do a great job at this operating budget. But it seems like they add little things right at the end on the capital leases, on different things every year, just to kind of build up that bottom line. So it's still underneath the default, but, it's adding unnecessary stuff.
Tom?
Let me just see if I get this. Our job here is to do one of a couple things. Either take a vote whether we recommend the school board budget as amended, or recommend a number for a budget.
No, we
No, one or the other.
decide whether or not we support that.
So, let me ask it a different way. If we say we don't recommend this, can we propose a number?
Tomorrow, yeah.
We can make a recommendation. Last year, we made a recommendation on the town side when it came to human services, I believe it was, that we would accept the town proposal as amended as long as they gave us back $20,000 for social services.
Right.
We have that ability to make that recommendation. Doesn't mean they have to take it.
No, but I guess, with all the discussion back and forth here, it's, what do we do? Do we vote on this now?
Yeah.
And then, if we vote against, we can then tomorrow make a recommendation, or we can make a recommendation tonight?
Either way.
However,
We can
my point is
vote.
that, my point is that you can have some for and some against. Just take a vote and find out where you are.
Yeah, we can vote, I mean, exactly. We can vote on this.
Right.
With the understanding as an amended motion, right, that subject to, if this were to go down, or something to that effect,
I don't know the proper
We
procedure, how you
could
do that.
readdress
What
it
I would
in that
like you to
meeting
do
and-
is, I'd like to vote on this now with all of us, if that's something that members want to do. And if it is
with that.
approved, fine, and if it's not approved, then take this next step to make some sort of recommendation.
Wait, just,
based
the idea
on
of this
these
meeting.
these school district warrants, right? We have the unofficial drafted warrants, that this is the way it looked as of today.
Yep.
Okay? So based on today's numbers, right, there's been a lot of discussion, and people have been relatively pleased with the fact that the school district has been coming in, they came in below. There's been a lot of discussions about all the things that they've done to get to where they are. There's been a lot of understanding among the committee, from what I've gathered, that the committee felt that, in fact, they've done a pretty good job of trying to get this thing down. It is arguable whether or not there are other things, I understand that. And that could be up for discussion for tomorrow, but as of right now, given our numbers that we have to go by, we need to vote whether or not we need to support this, because we're running out of runway.
Let's vote.
Yeah, but that's not the question here. The question here is this meeting is designed that we can actually sit down and we can all discuss what our opinions are. okay?
Exactly.
It's not just a 7-0 vote and so be it.
No,
You know?
exactly.
This is where we can actually voice our opinions.
You can bring
And
ideas
to just
into
go ahead and
tomorrow
vote
night. Right.
doesn't give you that straight answer. That's why we're trying to iron this out as to why we're voting that way.
Because let's face the facts, we're all gonna vote,
Yeah.
probably for the smaller number, but we all certainly have very different views about it.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what's the suggestion?
My suggestion is we vote.
For a vote.
We have a motion,
In a second.
we have a second.
rant
And we were
for
just
5 more
discussing this, and I wanted people to have plenty of time to hammer these things out, considering everything that we've gone through to date to get to this point.
And we can voice our, positions collectively or individually tomorrow.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely. And we could also give explanation as to why we support or don't support these articles in tomorrow's meeting, right? Because even though we support the 64 million, well, if the reason we support it is because it's less than 65, with the caveat of, hey, guess what? We'd like to understand a few things, and if we could do better, great.
and maybe when they're looking at what can be cut further, you prioritize these things. They give you a master list of all these things. I mean, there's
Well, that
certain
is the priority
Yeah.
list in order.
And I specifically
order.
said summer school
In
is on
order.
top. I mean, it seemed a little,
I figure I'm still
Out of
gonna be
order.
on this committee in 2014, I'm just trying to make things a little easier for myself.
Okay,
Bring the vote?
are we ready?
Yep.
All right. Okay, Article 2, A. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against, please indicate by saying nay. Okay, that's 7-0 in favor of the school board budget as amended. At $64,716,379. And,
32 cents, oh.
yeah. Going into tomorrow's hearing, we certainly could discuss why we support that budget versus the other one.
you would rather do that on an individual basis, though, tomorrow? Is that what I heard, or I'm sorry?
I would like people to feel free to open up and discuss as you see fit.
I'm just asking if you think there should be, if we should have a consensus tonight, I don't know if 6 of us think there should be a certain number cut from it, or
If
if
we're
I
gonna
don't
get a
think you're gonna reach a
consensus tonight.
consensus.
you're not going to reach one. I said, yeah, okay, then
we've
then
covered
maybe
that
it's just
fairly-
individual.
I think
You're
we
right.
covered that
I think
thoroughly.
we've covered the
Okay.
fact that we support this default, this budget because it's less than the default. That's what we came to a consensus on.
Okay.
There's a varying
consensus is
views,
we like
which
the
is a
small
beautiful
number.
thing, and I applaud that,
Okay.
on where it really should be, and that's what makes it great, right, is because we have those varying views and welcome the input and so forth on those views, and
Okay.
if they differ, that's what makes us who we are. It's good stuff.
Are we going to do the same thing with the bargaining agreements for the school that we did with the town?
I don't think we have to, particularly on Article 3. Article 3 is the Londonderry Education, great segue, by the way. Londonderry Education Association bargaining agreement, and the article reads as, shall the voters of the Londonderry School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Londonderry School District and the Londonderry Education Association, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $638,952 for the 2012-2013 fiscal years, such sum representing the additional cost items attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits over those paid at current staffing levels in the prior fiscal year. The agreement calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits fiscal year, for example, for fiscal year 2013 through 2014, the estimated cost would be another $625,061. And then for the following year of 2014 through 15, it'd be an estimated cost increase of another $1,072,945. So I think it's important before I take a motion. In fact, no, I won't do that. I'll just go ahead and take a motion, and then we can take it from there for discussion. So why don't I take a motion on Article 3?
I'll move Article 3.
And
I will second it.
second it for discussion. I'd like to open up the discussion from this perspective. This is a cost impact to the taxpayer for FY13 of 19 cents per thousand. Okay, so that's roughly on a $300,000 home is probably somewhere in the vicinity of $60, I would say, right? And then the following year is another 18 cents per thousand. And then you go out that third year in this agreement, and it's another 31 cents per thousand. The total cost impact of this collective bargaining agreement over the 3-year period is over $2.3 million, right? So and in the details on what this incorporates, if I may, that's a 2% increase for FY13, 2.5% increase in for 2014, and 2.5% increase for 2015. And that varied depending on where they were and on their schedule and salary and so forth and so on. The bottom line is this, in my opinion, and I'd like to start it off, is this is a tough economy. We have a lot of people not getting any raises. They're getting reductions in pay if they've had to downshift their job because they got laid off a couple of years ago and they had to settle for a lesser job today or whatever. You have families that may have had double incomes coming in and now they have one. You have a lot of people having a challenge out there, and to actually, in good conscience, I personally would have a hard time, as much as I think everybody knows I really value the school district. I personally would have a hard time supporting a collective bargaining agreement that has any increases this year. And quite frankly, it's very hard to swallow these increases until I see commensurate increases out there in the economy, whether it's consumer price index, GDP growth that translates to a lot of great jobs that are increasing pay, and all these wonderful things that a good economy does. We're not seeing that right now, and to support this, I personally would have a hard time about it.
I'd like a clarification. Would that $625,000 be on top of the budget as well? Because
Yes.
you are now over default.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
once you approve it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's why they were
Yeah.
talking the other night about they'd have to
Plus,
cut a couple of million or whatever to get to actual.
Just like the town budget, those warrant articles will be added on to that
But we
bottom
barely
line.
even got the default.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, but we didn't get close there.
Yeah, the memo that you passed
So
on,
that default that
Yeah.
they proposed to you isn't even really.
oh, I'm sorry.
the memo from Nate that, January 5th, that Chris passed on to me, says the budget stands now, including all proposed warrant articles, if we vote yes, is $66,424,146.
Other than that, I think Todd's.
But that was,
20 cents.
John, that was minus
The following.
the collective bargaining agreements.
So that it says, oh, was, okay, it doesn't,
Yeah, it
it
was
says
less-
including the
less
lease, but it doesn't say anything about less than.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a January 5th memo?
It's important to
first
note,
page.
if I may, it's important to note, because I did ask the question specifically, that there are no evergreen clauses,
Okay.
right? So if this isn't supported and the voters did not pass, then it means that it's not like something different that's gonna be even more expensive or anything like that. It'd be,
Stays as is?
the salaries would stay as they are.
And
So
they
we
get
would,
their COLA.
there's not a possibility that we could get hit with something worse than this?
No, no.
But according to
That's
this,
the way I
nothing
understood
was, usually we discuss evergreens when somebody gives up something like they start paying more for insurance in the new contract. So we're
All
making
of-
out that way. This seems to be just a raise from what they've given us. I don't know
No,
what they gave up.
all
It's
the
part of
older
it.
contracts in the town and on the school side had evergreens built
Yeah,
in for
absolutely.
years. And they've slowly eliminated that evergreen clause, which is a good thing.
All I'm saying is that, in the past, we've discussed, I just remember past town meetings where, we maybe didn't like the raise that somebody was getting.
Right.
But they decided to pay 10% more in the insurance, and somehow it worked out. We wanted that instead of,
As a concession.
from what the school district's given us, they're just getting a raise.
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not, but this is what the school district is giving us. That's all.
Yeah, it translates to these increases, 19 cents per thousand in FY13, 18 cents in FY14, 31 cents in FY15. It's a $2.3 million cost to the taxpayer at a time when, frankly, it's real tough out there. And I, in good conscience, at this juncture, in this economy, in this situation, would have a hard time supporting this article.
Mr. Chairman, are we aware of why we have this jump? 19 to 18 makes sense, but why would we go in 2015 and 2016, a 31-cent increase? That's a major shift.
It works out, the way I understand it, and you could ask them directly tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
But the way I understand it, it's the timing, it's also a timing thing, I believe, with the salary, the schedule, as to when they reach certain points.
The
And
steps.
who's gonna be
Steps.
included in the raises.
Okay.
Yep, it's
So
a
when
step
you, it's a
process.
multiplier effect, right?
Right,
So
right.
this year, it's not quite as bad, next year, not quite that bad, but then you're gonna have maybe another group of people that reach a certain threshold in their
In
salary
their
schedule,
training.
and then they get that raise.
Okay.
And when you multiply that out and then you add it all up, it comes out to,
That's
you
where
see
the
this.
impact comes in.
Yeah, you see that increase. It's kind of a sliding scale, if you will, of increases. And it's tough right now to agree to that.
Especially when you look at the town contracts that were presented to us, when a couple of the unions gave up
Yeah.
their percentage raise for the first year, something like that we could discuss. I mean, as far as this contract, there's no way I personally could support it. I have a problem with people comparing everything to the private sector, because I really truly feel like if every single person in the private sector got a raise next year, they still might vote this down, just because of the large tax impact. So I don't know that you can really compare apples to oranges that way.
Yeah,
but
fair enough.
I
fair
couldn't
enough.
possibly.
But the
This is
climate,
for $300,000 house, this is $204 for the
Exactly.
next 3 years. That's
Exactly.
a huge amount of money.
and plus you add that to conceivably the other increases that you're gonna get from other areas. And before you know it, your $6,000-7,000 tax bill is now $8,000.
It's just
Don't forget
And
that
we're,
solid gold Mickey Mouse statue in the Capitol leases.
yeah. It's just, at this juncture, it's just a tough pill to swallow, in my opinion. That's where I stand. Did you have any?
No, I would,
I want to open it up to.
okay. I'd like to
Anybody
address
else?
this, and honestly, I'm very supportive of our school district and very supportive of teachers. There are a number of teachers in my family, as it turns out, of various generations. I am not uncomfortable with this year and next year, but I'm very uncomfortable with what is going to happen in that third year out. I don't personally feel I can justify it in my own mind. I'm looking at my tax bill and thinking about what we'll be paying for the next few years as retirees. And I know there are young families who have job insecurity added to that. So it's not only, a flat income, it's a situation where they may be, and in fact, in danger of losing their jobs. And I, as I said, I come to this with a great deal of difficulty, but I think I'm going to oppose this contract as presented by the school board. I just can't justify it in my own mind in these economic times.
This time, I'd like to open up if there's any other comments from the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a good conversation that you're having. As one of your constituents and taxpayers, I'm glad to hear this. I do think your role is unique in that you do have to holistically look at the town and school budget collectively and map that to the ultimate tax bill that everyone receives. So I think you're actually obligated to kind of do a compare and contrast when you can. You have that opportunity this year where you've got 3 contracts on the town side, all of which were negotiated with a first-year 0% cost of living. There are other factors in those contracts that you should also look at, but it is pretty clear that the first year of each of those contracts of a group of employees on one side of this ledger sheet, we were able to negotiate something more palatable given the economic situation. As I said at the beginning of the meeting before John showed up, is that when I looked at this and I looked at the Allied Health, the other contract, they're very similar in that there are raises in the first year, and I think it would have been better, given the situation that we're in, it would have been better to have the negotiating committees and the employees involved to come forward with a contract that mapped to what we saw on the town side. So I too have difficulty with the significance of the number year 1, 2, and 3, but then collectively the aggregate number is very, very significant. And so I'm going to struggle with supporting this one as well. And in fact, I don't, based on what I'm seeing as one individual. I think it would be better to have the folks go back and try to renegotiate something that's more financially viable given the circumstances in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments at this point? Okay. With that, then, if there's nothing else, I'd like to go ahead and put this to a vote if that's okay with folks. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and we have a motion, we have a second, we've discussed it. Go ahead and vote on this. All those in favor of Article 3, please indicate by saying yay. All those against, please indicate by saying nay. Nay. That's 07. So the Budget Committee does not support this particular collective bargaining agreement.
Just a quick question on the, because Mike had said earlier that, and I know the math has gone back and forth, on $35,000 for 1 cent on the tax rate. Mike, you said that? So it's different, that was my question,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Because this is saying 1 cent for a $56,000 raise on the Allied Health contract, so I was a little confused. Okay. Gotcha, okay, okay.
Okay, Article 4, authorization of special meeting on cost items. So I'll go ahead and put this out there. Do I have a motion on Article 4?
I move Article 4.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay, do I have a discussion? Any input? Okay, why don't we go ahead and vote on Article 4?
Oh,
It's just
we-
allowing them to
yeah.
actually have a follow-up meeting if Article 3 were not to pass. So, okay, all those in favor, was there any other discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor of Article 4, please indicate by saying yay.
Aye.
Yay. Got you
We'll
guys
get
again.
this sometime.
All those against? Okay, that passes 7-0.
There's a method to his madness. He's keeping us awake by the yay.
You got it.
Pick
You
one and
got it.
stick with it, would you?
I think it's the term "yay" is so
Todd says.
inappropriate.
It's an anticipated
Exactly.
response. Let's see. Going on to Article 5, this is the, another collective bargaining agreement. This is Londonderry Association of Allied Health Professionals. And this particular item is similar to the other article, Article 3, in the sense that there were raises indicated for the first year, as well as the follow-on 2 years. First year of $51,930, and then estimated cost in the 2013-14 year of $56,426, and the following year after that of another $61,500 for the fiscal year 2014-2015. The estimated tax impact in year one is 1 cent per thousand, and you get the idea. It's a similar situation, even though it's dramatically less of an impact. It's still philosophically kind of a similar situation, which in this economy would be tough for folks to.
How many people does that
That was
actually
exactly
affect?
my question.
How many people, and what's the percentage of
The
increase on
town
each year?
tells us how many people are covered under each contract. That's
Yeah,
what
that, you know what, I don't think I have that piece.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't think it would be a huge population.
No, it's
That's
not. It
Yes.
is minor, but again,
I'll motion to adopt the article for discussion, just so we're
second.
parliamentary correct.
okay, so it's up for discussion at this point. Do I have any comments at this point? We had some questions starting to be floated, which we don't have answers for. Yeah,
I moved, Dan seconded, I
Dan
think.
Dan, thank you.
I think that both the boards discussed these contracts at their meetings and not at conjunct.
Correct,
Join
but they're
meetings, correct.
looking for us to make a recommendation
I know,
on something that
that's
we
why
haven't
we don't know
discussed, so-
anything, because it wasn't during the budget meetings, right? It was all,
well, from my perspective, in mine only at this point, is I have a hard time supporting an article that has any raises in the immediate future, given, in year one, given the times.
Sure, especially with no backup, with no explanation of why. You know, if there was some type of
probably a
extenuating
similar-
circumstance where for the last 5 years they hadn't had a raise, and that would be one thing, but if it's just a standard 3-year,
Yeah.
let's up in 2% every year, I can't go for that right now.
This was the one, I think, if I remember correctly, comments made, 2.5%, 2.5% or something like that. This,
It was minimal impact.
well, no,
Is
it was
this
not minimal impact so much. It was continuous raises throughout the contract, of course, the living. But
Oh.
I think, I don't know how many people, I don't remember that discussion.
I don't think it was.
I don't think it was
Is
even
this
said.
something that we could hold off on voting until we have our questions answered tomorrow evening? Because we will be in this,
But I think you'll
We will
find
next door.
that the scenario probably is gonna mirror
I don't
This
know that it's
because
gonna
of
change any of our votes.
the less number
the
of people.
steps.
I mean, we could do like we did last year, once again, is there were some situations that we actually took a consensus and actually took a vote in the combined meeting as a budget committee. If you guys feel comfortable, forgive the expression, feel comfortable with doing so in that forum, then by all means, ask some questions, and once we feel comfortable then, we could have a side vote, if you will, like we did last year. I believe we did it last year.
Mr. Chair, if I could just recommend, if we're going to post a meeting for Thursday following Town Council budget workshop, perhaps we could address these issues at that time, and then we would have due notice
Yeah.
on the, rather than because I do agree that tomorrow night
Town
would
side
be
too.
very, very
It would be
quickly.
You mean combine the town and the school?
Yeah,
Well,
again,
because
absolutely.
we're only gonna have a few issues that need to be voted on.
that's right.
So, but, and we would have notice on the town website for people to come and be aware that we'll
Yeah,
be meeting
with
following
enough time. for-
town council. And in
exactly.
that way, we won't
I
get
would
the
agree.
confusion of,
I think we err to the side of caution
Yeah.
and make sure tomorrow
Yeah,
that,
Absolutely.
you know, that the town,
when I get home,
so let's postpone Article 5 then, and do we have the retraction of the motion?
So I'll retract it.
Okay. So why don't we do that? That makes a lot of sense.
question of detail on.
So we'll have a-
Article 5.
We'll have a
Yeah.
combined meeting again on, after the town meeting.
Town meeting, yeah.
So nobody minds being here till 2 AM.
We just have to start at 11:59, otherwise we didn't post your meeting on Friday.
That's right.
I hope this.
And we gotta follow up first thing Friday morning with the results so
That's
that they
right.
can get it to the
Yeah,
printer.
That's true, that's true.
so 6 is
Yeah, two of the
6 is
same
a fallback on 5. Do we want to vote on that?
I think we had enough to go on,
6 is the same as
6
4.
is
The
like
town has
4.
one article.
so
for
you moving
three
on to
theirs.
6, you mean?
Yeah,
Well, if we're going to defer 5,
yeah. We can still do
6 is a contingency for if 5 fails. Do we want to vote on that now? Because it's not going to make a difference as
It
One
doesn't
way or the
matter.
other.
Yeah.
I just haven't got that far yet. We were still
Is there any
kinda,
reason why we would want to restrict them from,
No.
No,
I can't imagine
so
why.
I can't see why we wouldn't vote
Yeah.
now.
That's right.
I'd be mean.
That's what I just said to Todd, though. It's kind of weird. The town has one article that lets them meet for all three of their, and then the school has one for each of their articles.
Yeah.
It's just a little odd, but I would think the vote would be the same.
that was always the way we,
Yeah.
I will move Article 6.
I'll
Do
second
I have a
that.
second?
Second.
Rich?
We have a second? Okay. All those in favor of Article 6 to allow them to have their special meeting should the bargaining agreement be defeated? In Article 5, please indicate by saying yea.
Aye.
Hey,
All right?
Yeah, those against, please indicate by saying nay. Okay, that's 7-0, supporting that. Article 7, school lunch and federal projects. This is there is $0 impact. This is a self-funding program. But this is for the school lunch and federal projects. And the article reads as follows: shall the voters of the Londonderry School District vote to accept and receive federal grants and other such funds to support the school lunch program and federal projects. Further, to raise and appropriate such funds in a special revenue fund as follows: school lunch programs of $1,462,679. Federal projects, $1,489,500. Such funds to be self-supported through local, state, and federal revenue sources. The estimated tax impact of this to the taxpayers of Londonderry and their property tax would be $0 per thousand. Do I have a motion?
A motion to move that.
Okay. Do we have a
Second.
second? Do we have any discussion?
Just for my own clarity, that's, you're gonna get a grant from the government, and we're voting to use it for the lunches.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And that's an allocated grant. I mean, that's
yeah,
for
yeah.
lunches, and we're
Right.
just voting to accept it.
But
We're
it
voting
also
to accept
requires
it.
you to follow the guidelines
That's
by
right.
taking
And
those
raise
funds.
lunch prices.
And
And
raise lunch
that's
prices
one of the
and so
guidelines.
forth. Because the Fed
Right.
makes
There,
them.
they set the minimum, so we gotta raise the price.
That's right, that's right. Is there
Proving
any-
the old adage, there is no such thing as a
I
literal
feel
free lunch.
That's right.
So they can
Do we
tax
have
a
any
child.
comments from the public on Article 7? No? Great. Okay, if we're ready, go ahead and I will go ahead and take a vote on Article 7. All those in favor of Article 7, please indicate by saying yay.
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 I'm waiting for him to throw us a curve,
Really?
like tell us
All
to say meep or
opposed?
something.
All opposed, please indicate by saying nay.
Say cheese.
And the chair voted in favor of that as well, so that's 7-0. Article 8, special article for school buildings maintenance fund. Shall the voters of Londonderry School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $600,000 to be placed in the school buildings maintenance fund? The school buildings maintenance fund was previously established and approved at the March 1995 school district meeting. The estimated tax impact for this particular item is 18 cents per thousand. The intended use of these funds, it should be noted, is for major one-time capital costs for district facilities, including roofs, paving, boilers, and small renovation. So why don't I go ahead and put this out there before we get started? Is there a motion?
I'll motion to move that.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Chris?
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, there's something I noticed is there's no contingency here. If this gets voted down, they don't have a bond or anything.
Nope. Yeah, this is something that was, it fluctuates year to year, and this was.
Fluctuates. Last year was, what, $275,000. This is
But
going
they
to be a
put
big
that money
thing.
in the general budget. Is what
Well,
they
is
said.
this what-
They're still
Correct,
spending.
correct, but
That's
it's
what
still
they
a
were
big
talking about.
number
They were
for a
gonna-
taxpayer to
Absolutely.
look at and say,
That was part of the discussion.
boy.
You
Yeah.
remember the other
and they
night.
didn't do anything to back it up. So if this gets shot down,
They-
they're not going to have anything for a maintenance trust fund.
Yeah.
Is this what they were talking about, where they were gonna bank like half of it for paving?
This was the
Yes.
Right.
Carry it over to the next
Fiscal years,
year.
correct.
And this is
Yeah.
what I
To
said
get the
to
job done at the
Yeah.
That's it.
parking lot
Matthew
done.
Thornton, and I said to Rich, and Rich told me the reasons, but I'm just still so confused on this Matthew Thornton thing. $750,000 to pave the parking lot. We're giving Giannis that much money
To do
to
every
pave 3
road.
roads, or however many miles of roads in town a year. And I understand there's drainage, and everything. It just seems like a huge number. It just,
Yeah, there's a
seems
lot
like
of
a
other work
huge
that
number.
would need to
Yeah.
go into it, the way it was explained to me.
yeah.
That there's a lot of other work that has to go into this. It is a huge number, it is.
It's
I
not
guess
just dropping asphalt.
From what I understand, there's a number of items in it's not just going in there and paving over, or doing a shim coat over some roads.
Shim and overlay.
Yeah, exactly, shim and overlay, right? That's one thing. This is actual construction and reconstruction of everything that goes underneath, and drainage and everything else, and it is a big number. What they're trying to do, and this was discussed at length a few years ago, about, trying to reserve a certain amount of funds on an ongoing basis to minimize, much the same as on the town side, they're trying to wean themselves from the need of having as many bonds and that sort of thing. This goes along the same lines. If this fails, I could envision that going forward, now you're going to have to put out some bond, some debt, issue debt, get the voters to approve a bond article. It could cost a lot more, and then you're not on a pay-as-you-go type of methodology. Now you're adding to your debt load and so forth.
And they did say that the other night, right? They said if
They
this
just
fails,
want-
they will have to do a bond.
Yeah, that's right. They would just have to go down that path, or whether it's next year or the year after, I guess, and there was a lot of discussion about how bad it is and the safety issues and so forth, if you remember the conversation the other night.
Yeah, they said someone actually had slipped and fallen, and anyone who's walked across that pavement knows it's due for a
And I
redo.
appreciate that,
Yeah.
but we're gonna go 2 full years before they fix it.
Well, because they're not asking for the full amount.
They're trying
I
to
know.
They're
put them in the
trying to
bank now and
be
put them in the bank
judicious
next
in
year,
their-
hopefully.
I would
Request.
re-ask the question, what are we doing now to make it safe? If we're gonna wait 2 full years, if it's that dangerous.
I think shim and overlay is
Yeah,
the answer to that
something.
question.
Yeah,
I thought half of it was getting done in the spring, and then the half in the next.
they were gonna split
Right,
some
they
of
can't.
it.
There's so much
Right.
drainage project that has to be done
Right.
to do it, that they're
So they
having
couldn't.
difficulty figuring out where they can
Yeah, they
leave
can't
off
do
and
half
start
of it.
over.
And the problem, yeah, exactly, because that was the question, right? Well,
Right.
couldn't you start half of it, and then problem is, yeah, you pave half of it, but then when you excavate the other side of it and fix that, you're
The
gonna be
big
driving all
trucks
the
are
heavy
rolling
equipment
in
over it.
across your new
And it would
pavement.
rip up the stuff they just did, so
Yeah.
it would be a waste of funding to do it that way, was the answer. The bottom line to me is it's a smart way to go about preparing. You put some in the bank now, you put some in the bank tomorrow, so you can plan ahead to make the repairs. Hopefully, the taxpayers will remember that this was the plan, and they're not surprised in a year and a half, 2 years from now, when, what are they doing, spend all this money for this, or whatever, while it was in the plan. They have that plan that went out to 2017, and now that's been pushed out to 2021 because of the reallocation of funds that were originally planned for a variety of programs, but because projects have gotten more expensive due to inflation, they've had to extend that improvement plan of a variety of things, everything from roofs and paving and a number of other things. I forget all the items on that lengthy list. But this goes towards achieving that goal of keeping this upkeep of the various properties in a manner that doesn't require us to go out at one point and have very large bonds that we have to go out and get and that sort of
They
thing.
might have taken a look at the town side with a smaller bond and a smaller number. That's a big number
That's
to
a
put in
big
front of
number.
the voter.
Absolutely.
A real big number.
It is.
And it is a
That's
really
the
big
biggest single
number.
number out there, really.
It is a really big number, and I guess that, I think
With no
it was
contingent
Rich
there.
that said it, Rich or you, Tom, said, I wish it was written better.
Let's
Because
see
I know a
without
couple-
the explanation.
It's tough, I mean, a couple of years ago, this article was on there, and I believe it specifically mentioned renovating the track.
Right.
I believe it specifically mentioned that,
Yeah,
and
but
I voted
that-
against it, because I didn't think it was a
Exactly.
good time to do it. This needs to be done. If somebody got hurt, it's gonna cost the town, the school
Oh.
district money because somebody got hurt,
Potentially.
potentially. This needs to be done. So I hope, if it's not in the article, I hope they can advertise it well enough to make people understand why it's that big.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I mean, this is exactly what it's gonna look like, right?
Right,
No,
that's what I'm
not
saying.
necessarily. This is our draft. This is the unofficial.
Okay.
It will look like the town version, which is the
But the
actual.
verbiage,
It's
Todd,
gonna be
has to
pretty
stay the
close,
same.
Yeah, the
because we're
verbiage
voting
would
on
be
it right
this.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
verbiage
no,
has
the
to be the
verbiage
same.
stays the same, but,
Unless they can alter it tomorrow night, maybe we should ask. I don't know.
yeah, we could do that.
Perhaps
Somebody better put something out. You just got
Yeah.
$600,000 is gonna hit them right
Yeah.
between the eyes.
Yeah.
Because this could be,
fun.
in case the roof leaks, that's how people could take this.
And, you know,
Exactly.
you-
That's a lot of money.
That's an expensive
That'd
leak.
be-
That's an
big leak.
expensive leak, that's what I'm saying, that's how people are gonna look at it.
Fair
Call
enough.
that a whole,
New pool.
They'll all run to the cable department, they have good roof.
Do I have any
It may
comments
also-
or input from the public on this?
It may be also a number that they designate that, the parking lot, because it adds boilers, small renovation projects. I mean, if they curtail the projects they're actually targeting, and it curtails the number a little bit, it's probably more palatable.
Well, I think they
why
said
why they
300.
didn't put an article on specifically for.
The
Yeah.
paving of that lot,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, because it's partially that, and part of that money will be carried over into the subsequent fiscal year.
Yeah,
So
but
that's
this way,
the
if it's voted down, you get
complexity.
nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
a valid point. It's a
Because there may
valid
be
point.
some people who've been to that school and say, that needs to be done.
Yeah, some people might
But
say
something
no.
else, a small renovation project can wait another year.
Exactly.
That's
You're just giving more options. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Glenn Douglas, 6 Overlook. Does this have some sort of not to exceed? Because going back in history, when the high school track was put up for whatever, I forget the amount, it came in at double. We found the money in the same year. When the high school parking lot was done, it came up for double, and we found the money again. This is $750,000 to completely tear out the parking lot, completely reconstruct, and dig out, I believe, a DeSoto they found buried under the parking lot somewhere, and start from scratch. There was, and I did not mention this, well, no one's here that's going to write it down as a reporter, but there was a discussion a couple years ago from the school board which stated, at what point will we consider closing a school? That was 4,400. We're at 4,800. At 130 per year, we're going to be at 4,400 pretty darn quick. When the high school parking lot was redone, someone said, hey, what the heck? I just drove by and they tore it up. The reason given was to fix the drainage. And the person told me that spends a considerable amount of time at the parking lot, what are you talking about? The drainage is the exact same way as it was before. We didn't fix anything. This is a $750,000 project. This is huge money. I've been to a lot of other schools when my daughter used to cheer for football. They have paved curbings. We have granite curbings. This is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And I'd like to know if this is it. What happens if we're at $1.2 million to repave the parking lot?
That's a fair question. I don't think we're going to have that answer here, particular to this article. It's a matter of, do we support them raising the $600,000? And it's a valid point what you're saying, but I don't know what to tell you.
And it's even more valid because they were discussing it the other night, and this project a couple of years ago would have
That's right.
been 300 or 400,000, they said, and
That's
it's now
right.
up to 750.
And
So
now
yes,
it's
it's already
increasing.
doubled.
And
To
once
answer
you
your
start the
question.
project, it's a no-brainer selling that it's gotta,
That's right.
gotta go all the way.
It's a valid concern. It really is. It really is.
But Glenn, to respond to the detail of your question, certainly at the school board meeting tomorrow night, they're having a budget workshop, and it would be completely appropriate to bring that question forward at
They
that
took
time.
no public comment when this was discussed at the last meeting. So unless we wanted to raise our hand and budge ourselves forward, there was no comment.
Have you tried asking to be placed on the public comment portion? Because we're very open if someone approaches us, and, I mean, we're also open to having
Hey,
anyone to speak.
I want to do a quick rewind on that one. The beginning of the meeting said you wouldn't take public comment until Chris stood up and said, "Can we please talk again?" So
Yeah.
the-
That's,
you don't understand what the people out here, other than the regulars like me, Mike, and Reed, who's in DC, I think, they don't even understand if you can stand up and make a comment. And we're going to be in the back room of the school board room anyway,
I did bring that up,
you know,
too.
with a Woodmont meeting tomorrow night.
Right.
Anyone that's paying attention, anything is going to be in here talking Woodmont. They're not going to be there.
yeah, I'd like to clarify something. I meant no ill intent whatsoever with my comments in the beginning. It was strictly because we had a large burden of things that we knew we were gonna have to get through. And I wanted to give opportunity for folks to give comment during the public comment section, but I tried to, my intent was to be able to enable us to take public comment during the public comment. And then, once we got into going through this discussion, we could hold our meeting, because we have these meetings in the public for the public to see, obviously, but it was just strictly in the intent of just trying to get through a bulk of a lot of work here. It meant no disrespect to anybody, because I think anybody who's watched these meetings from the summer till now, you know, we have been very open and welcoming to anybody who wants to comment throughout our meetings. And this was the first meeting, quite frankly, that we were trying to just make sure that at least we allowed us enough time to get through what we needed to do. That was the only intent of my beginning statements, and it was no ill intent of anybody for any reason whatsoever other than that. And I just want to make sure that everybody was clear on that. We've been very open and welcoming, as I said, throughout this process, and it's been encouraged, and we encouraged earlier in the process to get as many people to these meetings as possible when you can really affect change. And as we get later and later into the process, you run out of window, a runway to affect those changes to what we need to do up here. So I appreciate your comments, and I really do appreciate all feedback that we get. Unfortunately, sometimes, whether online or directly in person, we can't always address them to everybody's satisfaction in a timely enough manner, and that's unfortunate sometimes, but I just wanted to say that.
And that was just my comment on the paving. I've seen this before. And as far as, you know, having to put the bond out there, I don't think there needs to be a bond put out there. They've come up with the money before, you know, and to saying we're gonna cut all this, we were talking about a $50,000 cut last month. A few years ago, we reached into some magic bag and pulled out a $250,000. Then we pulled out another $250,000. I talked to someone else, and he said, the thing that gets me is I don't understand how things keep getting built. He's big in the football field. Fields keep getting built. He says to me, he says, where does the money come for this? It just comes, it appears, because it's a bottom line budget. So I can't see that there's not more room to cut. But if we're going to put $250,000, $750,000 in for that parking, I don't want someone come up and say, well, we started digging and we found 17 DeSotos and now it's going to be $1.5 million. You know, this is New England. You know, put on a pair of boots. It's, I'm done. You guys can go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
Any other comments at this point?
Yeah, my concern would be, what if the $600,000 was approved, and then the next year they go, oops, we spent it?
Well, we were told that they were gonna set
This
300,000
is-
aside.
This would be set
I
aside.
understand what you're saying, but
It's
Yeah, but it doesn't say that.
No, it doesn't. It's a building maintenance trust fund. It
You
has to
could
be
spend it on
used,
anything for the maintenance trust fund.
it has to be used upon the buildings and repairs for that building, but it can be used for anything. You're
Right.
setting it
it
aside.
already
It says-
happened. It already happened. The money was already there for this parking lot from what they told us,
And
and it was
oops, we
spent on
spent it.
something else, correct?
Yeah.
That was already
But,
happened.
but we are going to be voting on this, Article 8, because it is our understanding that the intended use for these funds is for the major one-time capital costs for district facilities, including roofs, paving, boilers, and small renovation projects. We've been discussing the paving project in particular, but understand that when we're voting on this, yea or nay, it's with that understanding. So whether you're for or against it, so be it, wherever it lands, but it's based on that understanding. And there are some very valid points that were brought up tonight from the public, that is a possibility, cost increase over time. But please understand, as we're voting on whether or not we support Article 8, it is with the understanding that it could be used for the variety of facilities, including the roofs, paving, boilers, small renovation projects. It's not earmarked specifically just for, necessarily all for that.
Well, I think that's part of what my problem is.
Then vote appropriately to that point.
And I mean, the bottom line is,
Almost inclined
it's
to-
$54 next year. That's what we're voting for. It's $54
I was
on
inclined to vote
$300,000.
no, just to, I don't know.
You see what my point is, though? I mean, the only reason why I support it is because I
do
believe in
support it.
putting money aside to make sure that you have it. My only concern is, okay, make sure it's spent in a timely enough manner and wisely, so that, you optimize the usage of the funds.
Right.
And mitigate the need for future bonds,
Future bond.
should that need arise.
Because
That's why I'm for this, is because to me, it's like putting it in the piggy bank, so that when you need it, you have it.
I'm just scared both would happen.
No, there's
Well, not
nothing
this
on
year.
here to indicate that. But we have heard the town council, in fact, try to pull themselves away from that bonding cycle. And so I think this is the type of article that allows us to do that and to ensure that there's a constant supply and the taxpayer isn't hit with a big ticket item with
Yours-
nothing to back it up.
Irrespective of the position we take on this, if the taxpayers say, we don't want to spend $600,000 on a parking lot, and they turn around and bond it.
Well, they'd have to have a warrant article.
They'd have to have a
Bond
special-
hearing,
You know.
and the
You
voters
didn't
would
like
have
that
to
one,
approve
here's
that.
another one.
All I'm saying is I don't like the way it's written, that's all.
Fair enough. I don't blame
You want to
the
see it, you want to see it designated.
You know what,
this
it's all your
particular-
fault, Todd.
It is, just blame me.
Well,
I'm
you
an
know-
easy target as it is.
No, but once burned, they're saying, we had it in this account, we used it for something else, now we want to put it in the account, and this time we need it. I mean, you know.
You put it in there,
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
exactly.
that's what's
Suppose they
this.
think
You don't want to
think-
pull it out of
500-gallon
the
water
magic
heaters
hat.
in all the schools.
You want to pull it out of a fund, correct.
No, I think Chuck does the best he can, and he's trying to,
Yeah.
handle the money
Clearly.
appropriately. I just think that's a big project to swallow in a tough year, and, you got to weigh the risk versus,
Fair enough.
this is a tough year to go through these warrants and take a position, because a lot of these I'm looking at saying, I'm not going to vote for this in the ballot box, so I'm not going to vote for it here.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is I think if you put this on the town side, it would be no. But because it's in the school,
It'll be yes,
it might pass.
because all the school ones always seem to pass.
Well, and again, it's how many people have parked in that parking lot and walked across the pavement. How many years have we been hearing, when are you going to fix this parking lot?
When you
I mean,
pay for it.
This is an ongoing situation, and we did have one person fall already. So I think it is an issue of safety, I think it's an issue of liability, and I think it's an issue of responsibility to keep us from bonding and pay-as-you-go.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I would tend to lean towards supporting this article.
I would too. I think it's important for all of us to remember that again, this year, I know everyone's the big scary deliberative session, but somebody can come in this year and make this 200,000. I think that's more
Sure,
palatable.
sure.
Like, this can all change. Every one of these articles can
Exactly.
change.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. We're just voting on what our position
What
is
we
at this
have,
point,
right. What we
and
have.
it's subject to change. Our position is what it is, but
That's right.
you go there, and that's what's great about, the process.
That's right.
Okay, any other discussion at this point? Okay, do you want to feel comfortable? Let's take a vote. Article 8, all those in favor of Article 8 indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. All those against indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
So, how many was that? Was that 4?
4-3-0.
4 to 3?
So who
3-4.
opposed? Tom, Rich, John?
And Tom.
I got
And Dan.
Tom, Rich,
And
John,
Dan.
And Dan,
and Dan.
3-4.
Opposed, 3 to 4.
Yeah, 3-4.
Okay. So that one, the Budget Committee does support that.
I've
Does
heard
not.
Does not.
Does
3
not
to 4.
support.
3-4.
3 to 4.
You mean
No, I
wait
thought
for
it was-
support.
I
Tom,
thought it was
Rich,
4 of us. Dan?
Dan opposes.
Dan said no.
Dan,
Oh, you said
John
no, I thought you
opposed,
said
Tom
Dan
yes.
and
Rich
John
opposed.
opposed. Rich and Tom opposed.
I feel like he gave me. Dan said no.
Sorry.
You're in the majority, it's okay.
Fair enough. Article 9, special article, use of year-end unreserved fund balance. The article reads, shall the voters of Londonderry School District vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $50,000 to be placed into the school buildings maintenance fund, and to authorize the use of that amount for the June 30th, 2012 unreserved fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2012. The school buildings maintenance fund was previously established and approved at the March 1995 school district meeting. The estimated tax impact is 1 cent per thousand. Do I have a motion?
I motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Very confused.
Am I reading that wrong?
Aren't
They're-
these
they're-
the same thing?
No, am I reading they're taking it out of an unreserved fund balance that already exists, but it has a penny tax
Why does
impact?
it
How
Why
can
is that a
that?
penny tax increase?
I don't know.
Shouldn't that be
Should be a
zero?
minus. Should be a minus 1 cent.
Minus 1 cent.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's, yeah.
But it's going in the same account. We're gonna have 650,000.
It's just,
in that
it's just
account.
moving it from a,
$50,000 certainly sounds like a reasonable maintenance fund if you have a leak or need a boiler or
Right.
something like that.
And if you have a driveway.
I'm not sure why that's a 1 cent.
If I have a $750,000 driveway,
Yeah.
it would look funny in front of my house.
Fortunately, it's not your house
that?
we're paving.
I'm trying to remember which one this was.
This is taking
The
basically
UFB.
the leftover money at the end of the
Oh, this is the one
2012
that-
budget, taking 50,000 of that
Right.
and putting it into 2013.
right.
So
So
what
they
is that
can carry it
doing?
over
That's
that.
basically filling in the gap that they just took off the default budget. They took off their proposed
And last year, we
budget.
did not support this. It had to come
Correct.
back to the taxpayer.
Correct.
This was
We
brought up.
prefer to have it go back to the taxpayer than
Why is there a
jumping on it.
tax impact?
It's a negative 1
Negative.
cent.
Negative.
Yeah.
Just negatives.
Should be a,
So it should say negative
It's
0.
a typo.
Okay. It's a typo, okay.
I don't know.
I don't deal with negatives on this budget.
I don't feel comfortable.
They don't see that a lot.
I don't feel
Minus.
comfortable either.
I don't feel comfortable with this one.
Well,
I'd
do we
like-
want to ask questions tomorrow night?
That's what I'm thinking.
Put this
I'd like
one
to,
on
I'd
hold?
like to postpone voting
Okay.
on this one into tomorrow, but I'd also like to take some comment.
Quick, just a clarification from what I remember from the discussion. The $50,000 was to get them, the 600, they need $750,000 for the parking lot. The $600,000, they didn't want to make that 650, they were afraid it would get voted down. So they said, well, we'll put a separate one on, take the 50, make it 650, pull 100 grand from someplace else, get a $750,000 parking lot.
Because that sounds much better.
So that's what the
That's what this was.
the
That's what the
$50,000 was. It's going to the parking lot. It was to increase the big one.
So it's
too
accounting
big
gimmicks.
And get shot down. Just,
Smoking mirrors.
They just want
It's
to
smoke
carry
and
it
mirrors.
over
Right.
to be able to
and
utilize
there's a
it.
tax impact because
It goes
if they
into-
don't vote to move it, it has to come back
I gotcha.
to him.
Right, exact, to the taxpayer.
I'll give
Yeah,
my
and this
vote
is
to
the same methodology used by the town council to offset some of the expenses at the community level there as well.
And this allows them to carry it forward.
Well, it's different than the council because the council gets to keep whatever's
That's
left
right.
over.
The school,
They
So
don't.
if there's
without
$500,000 left over at the end of the school, it comes back. Council can keep and keep and keep.
The defrayed,
Thank
right,
you.
goes back.
So we can vote on it.
Yes, we can. Thanks to our helpful public, keeping us on the straight and narrow. Glad somebody is.
I don't know. I'd almost rather amend Article 8 and take 50,000 off. We already don't support it as a budget committee, so I guess we can't, we can't support this either. We didn't support the other one, how can we support this
Well, you
one?
can support it.
You can absolutely support this because it has zero tax impact. This is, the Budget Committee is looking to protect the taxpayer. This is utilizing funds to defray expenses that, for the benefit of the community.
I guess I want to, and I've asked this
Minus
question a
one
couple
cent.
times about appropriate budgeting this year, and I realize I'm new, and I probably asked these questions stupidly, but why is there going to be $50,000 left over?
If there is
Why
50,000,
isn't it
Up to.
budgeted correctly now, so there's not going to be 50,000 left over?
If
In the
you
real
can't
world, if you don't use
that,
part of
yeah.
your budget, you don't get it next year.
Well, that's the problem.
Well, to base it,
That's the problem, is that you,
It depends.
it's like, you know, what the federal government does, the bureaus ask for more and more each year because, and they'll use it up because you won't get it next
But
year.
if they don't use it, they don't get it next year, right?
That's correct.
But in this case, they're not using it and
Well, the
they're still
question,
getting it
the
next
question
year.
I have is, 50,000 goes back to the taxpayers if it doesn't, if it's not allocated to go to the buildings and grounds.
that's right. If, up to, if.
Up to,
this is
whatever,
an
whatever,
if.
whatever's
If-
excess.
if
they
there's a
have-
balance
If they
available.
have a balance, they can hold up to $50,000 if there's a balance.
Right.
Right? There may be a lot more than that. Anything more than that, they have to give back.
If
Yeah,
I had
They
my,
can reserve it
They
this
do.
way.
if I had my druthers, I'd rather see this go to some of the things on Nate's list, the music programs and some of the,
Summer
you know,
school.
coordinators and part-time employees,
You like
then,
summer school.
you know, but, you know, it's, I know we can't delegate that, so.
I just can't
Well,
believe it's
you
number
know,
one.
I-
on the
Why
list.
did
I
they
sup-
mention that this was approved at the 95 school district meeting?
The
It almost
fund.
makes me think it's money left over from 1995.
But
The fund was created.
I would
Well,
like
you
to
can
say
make
that
sure
we've
the
gone
fund-
on
the fund
record
is
to
authorized.
approve this methodology for the town council, so I don't see any reason why we would not support the same.
On which one?
The undesignated fund balance. We've utilized that several times on the town warrant, and I would support using it here as well as a reasonable way to fund these programs. Again, if the fund balance isn't available, that money will not be expended. This is, if there are funds available, we will permit the funds to be used for this purpose. And I don't know how many voters you heard complain about, when are you gonna fix the ceilings at Matthew Thornton in this summer? Look, they're finally fixing the roof. I mean, there are hundreds of voters out there, they're not in this room tonight, but are saying, why aren't you taking care of these very basic maintenance issues? And the building maintenance fund is a safety issue. And again, I think if you're looking for the bottom line responsibility, that's where we need to step up and take a stand.
I'll go on the record and say, I'm always for returning money back to the taxpayers, because I think we've, as 7 taxpayers in this room, we've all taken a hit in the last couple of years, and having just paid our property taxes, we don't escrow ours, we pay ours because of the way our mortgage is set up, but it hurts to write that check, and when you have it escrowed, before we went to a new mortgage, you don't really see it. I mean, over time, you don't see it when it comes out of escrow, but when you get on and you write that and you realize what a big percentage of your household budget that is, it's kind of sobering. The only reason I think I support this is because I just voted against that 600,000. I think there's got to be something in there, and as Dan said, maybe this is an appropriate amount that'll cover a boiler or what we need to get us through the next year or two of tight times, and hopefully that's all it is. So I'm kind of leaning towards voting for this, just to give them a little bit of savings that they won't have to, you know, cancel a program or bond something just to fix something that, you know, does break, and, you know, with the number of buildings and facilities we have, something's gonna break. So that's where I'm leaning. But you can tell me if I'm missing something.
They're the same way John's thinking. Last year, I did the opposite. I voted for the maintenance trust fund, and I voted against this. It's got to be one or the other. They need at least some money for
They do.
repairs and stuff, and with this huge increase this year, the 600,000, I said no on that, on Article 8, so I think they at least need something, and Article 9 would do that for them.
Anybody?
We ready to take a vote then? Sure. Okay. Why don't we go ahead and take a vote on Article 9? All those in favor of supporting Article 9, please indicate by saying yay.
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 All those against, please indicate by saying nay. That's 7-0 support. Great. All right, that gets us through both the town and the school district warrant articles, with the exception of we need to follow up on Thursday evening on the 3 collective bargaining agreements for the town side, as well as Article 5 on the school side. So we'll follow up on Thursday evening after the meeting with the town council in that budget workshop, on that budget hearing, excuse me, I believe it is.
Calendar, we're next door tomorrow night and
So-
back in here Thursday night, is that correct?
We're in the
Correct,
rental
so-
room tomorrow.
We're in the little room.
Tomorrow night, we are next
Fishbowl
door
camera?
with the school district for that budget hearing. And then on Thursday, we are back here with the town council for that budget hearing. So, that's everything that we have for the committee business. We have no old business scheduled, and we've covered the new business via the committee business. So, excuse me, I jumped ahead here. Kind of mixed that up a little bit, forgive me. So we've covered all the new business, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
It's been motioned and seconded.
All those in
We said it
favor
very
say aye.
quietly.
Aye.
Aye.
Not a yay, but an aye.
Yay.